What's up, y'all? Hope everybody's well. Welcome back to the Onyx Report, where we, as Black male justice advocates, attempt to use, critical analysis, critical thinking, and empirical data to uplift the condition of Black boys and men. Hope you are well. Let me, as usual, first start today's broadcast by thanking those that support the channel. And I hope that you will do the same, like, share, subscribe, join, and donate, if you will. The information is on the screen. You can do that with Patreon, Cash App, PayPal, or Venmo. But for my subscribers, let me shout y'all out. All right, y'all. Hoping everybody's well. Shout out to Tim, Jay Cleveland. Hope you guys are good. Let me just get my last invitation out. So we're not gonna have a whole lot of rigmarole today. We're gonna jump straight through. So I'm going to my guests can come through as soon as possible because we're gonna kind of dive in. There's no particular reason. I'm just feeling like it. It is what it is. The first of whom I want to bring up to the stage is a longtime friend, both of myself personally and of the show. He's been one of the number one supporters and was the first to put a foot to my ass to get me on YouTube altogether. So let me bring in BGS IBMOR. What's up, man? BGS, can you hear me?
I said, foot the ass, huh?
Ass, man. Yeah. If it wasn't for you, I'd probably still just be doing blog articles. So I gotta acknowledge. And like I said, we're not gonna have a whole lot of rigmarole today. I want my guests to come through. I got a few more brothers coming up, and it's really a conversation. You and I have had this conversation off air.
But, many times, many times.
But it's time to have this one publicly because this is just getting ridiculous. Straight up. What's up, Hybrid Ninja? Mark, what's going on? Nim, what's up? Donnie, Theodore, what's up? Hope everybody's good. But yeah, this is getting ridiculous, man. So for those who don't know, right? We've been having a conversation. There's been a number of content creators. Thanks for that support, JH Booth. Excuse me. We've had this conversation for the last couple of years about various types of funding. Various types of financial support, be it philanthropic, federal, so on and so forth. And when I started talking about this on the Onyx Report, it was during 2020. It was in the onset of the pandemic, and my introduction to it had more to do with PPP loans, support for entrepreneurs, so on and so forth. And one of the trends that I started to notice very early on was that there was funding for business owners, and there was funding for minorities, Black being included. And then there was a special category of funding for Black women. And I challenged my audience to find me a pandemic era, resource for Black males. Not one has been found. I had one brother shoot me one, but it turned out it was a few years old and seemingly defunct at this point, right? So, that was 2020. And then we started to see this kind of influx of different types of support and resource, that extended outside of, small loans for mom and pop businesses. We saw Goldman Sachs, we saw Google, we saw Visa, we saw, a number of corporate philanthropical gestures that were targeting specifically and only Black women as
Mm-hmm.
far as the Black community was concerned. And then we started to see this rise in city level, funding for single mothers, but particularly Black single mothers. We saw this from San Francisco to Texas, to a variety of different cities around the country that we're starting to identify. And most of these were fairly small, but as I've covered in past shows, you also had those that were, funded in every state that were claiming millions of dollars. So between millions and billions, we're starting to see resources extended to Black women. Hey, that is what it is. I will let some of my guests chew on that meat to pull and, kind of pull apart and help us discover a little more about that. But this is something somebody in my comments in the last couple weeks brought up,
Mm-hmm.
and I was, you and I've been kicking this around anyway.
Yeah.
Uh, this whole question of my brother's keeper,
Right.
and when my brother's keeper came onto the scene, it garnered a lot of response. There were a lot of different reactions, many of which were, very alarmed in many ways. Um, some were extremely happy. People like myself had questions. I was, my biggest question is, was this going to be federally funded? What was
Mm-hmm.
this going to be? And it turned out it was going to be more philanthropically based, you know. But this was the beginnings of it, right? Now, before we get into all the minutia, I'd like to ask you, when my brother's keeper was first announced,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
what were your thoughts about it? What came to mind for you?
Well, we already had, Michelle Obama's thing for black girls,
Okay.
and even when that came up, there was a question: are you going to do something for the boys? It's okay that you do something for the girls. Don't want a part of theirs. And the thing is that boys are in trouble. Is there anything, since you're a black man, are you going to do anything for the boys? And we had to wait till his second
Term.
term for that to come about. So I thought,
Right.
okay, well, he's going to fulfill his promise by doing something for boys.
Now that's
And
interesting you say that, and shout out to Theodore Harrison for the support. It's interesting you say that because
mm,
I rarely hear people say, "What about the boys?"
mm-hmm,
More often than not, I always hear, "What about the girls?" I rarely hear, "What about the boys?" But is
mm-hmm.
that because Obama was in office, or
It was because Obama was in office, and a lot of black boys actually looked up to him.
yeah,
And so we thought, okay, you have a president and that's a black man. So a lot of black men thought, okay, he was actually going to do something for the plight of black men. Get them out of prison, find jobs for them. Basically, a jobs program for black men. That's what we thought.
that's what we thought. Yeah,
And it didn't. It didn't. And then we saw, like I said, the council for the president's council for girls. So said, okay, they have a girls program
yeah,
under Michelle Obama. Said, okay, so okay, you're a black male in office. Okay,
yeah.
are you going to do anything for people that look like you?
Now, yeah. Aside from lecture them on how
Yeah,
to
yes.
spray their paint, let me shout out. We got some brothers coming through. What's up, Nightwing, DJ B side, Malika, brother Malika. Always good to see you. Christopher, right? Prince Johnny, definitely Ian Graves. Appreciate the support in the chat.
On your left.
Yeah, yeah. Man Friday, Art Newstel. What's going on? Right? Winston, what's happening? Brother Muwada, always good to see you. Carl, we got a number of brothers coming through tonight. I guess it's I guess it's something we definitely need to
We're gonna get a Hassan sighting, I think.
unite. Let me also welcome my brother, Dr. Ronald Neal.
Oh,
We still
Dr.
got
Neal.
we still got a couple brothers we waiting on, but it's always good to have Dr. Neal in the house. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, man. How you
Yeah,
guys doing?
yeah. So I want to thank you for that classic uh, stream you did with Dr. Thunder.
Oh man,
That is unappreciated classic. that
Yeah.
people haven't peeped yet. So I may have to upload it to my channel for it to get more exposure because um, they have two heavyweights, on the other side of the ivory wall, actually talking real talk, man. A lot of
Hmm.
brothers don't get to hear that.
Hmm. Yeah, I hope more folks check it out, man.
Yeah, that was actually classic. And a lot of stuff you guys said, man, was about religion, about being a black man in the academy, you
Hmm.
know, um, about code switching and knowing that reading the room, all that, all the stuff that I've talked about, in here and there. But the thing is to hear, somebody with weight actually say it, man, means a lot.
Hmm.
So
Thank you,
now I
man.
appreciate that. So that's one of my favorite shows that you've
Man,
done.
that's good to hear, man. I appreciate that most definitely.
Let me also welcome. Let me see. We got ghetto user LaShawn. What's up? Jesse. What's going on? Eric. But let me also welcome. Some of y'all might know this cat. I'm not sure, but the PhD. If y'all
What's
know who
going
he is,
on, man? Can y'all hear me?
oh, man.
We got you, GG. Speak up just a bit.
What's
Yeah,
going on? Can you hear me now loud and clear?
Oh, that's
perfectly,
great. Perfect.
perfectly.
All
Yeah,
right, man. All
we got
right. What's
one.
going on? I'm sorry I'm late, man.
No, you ain't late. No, we just
We,
getting warmed up.
we got one brother that's still coming through. Adrian, appreciate that support, Adrian. Um, you know, he said, "I love the Tamir Rice podcast, gentlemen." So, hmm, okay. But anyway, so I don't know if you guys had a chance to hear how we were kind of approaching this discussion, but we started out looking at this. The early stage of this discussion was my brother's keeper,
Hmm.
and I was asking BGS, his first thoughts when my brother's keeper was announced, and I'd like to extend the question to both of you. I'll start with Dr. Neal, and we'll get to Gigi. What were your thoughts when my brother's keeper was announced? What were your initial thoughts?
Before he laid out what exactly it was and the details and everything like that, I thought it was a win, man. I thought it was a great move on his part. I thought about stuff that he had said in his memoir, Dreams from My Father. Conversations that he had with Jeremiah Wright in Chicago about young black men and their dilemmas and everything like that. And so initially, and also he had Eric Holder, who was his attorney general and everything. And I thought initially, without before even all the details, I'm thinking that this is going to be something that's historic and and much needed. You know what I mean? And I thought it was a good thing before hearing all the details. All right. But once he laid it out, and we discovered that this was not a government funded initiative. It had nothing to do with the state, and that it was an experiment. It was basically an experiment, something um, that did not have built into it a long term commitment. It was based primarily on measures and results and outcomes, meaning that the funders, the corporate funders, would determine the extent to which they would take it further. And so it was just an experiment. So I wasn't. So when I learned about all the details of it, I was disappointed,
Oh,
and
okay. Okay.
yeah, I was disappointed. But when it was announced, my hopes were up. But once the mechanics came out, and and how this thing was going to be executed, I just saw it as an affront to black men.
Yeah. Yeah. Good brother Gigi, why don't you weigh in on this? What were your first impressions when you found out about my brother's keeper?
Oh yeah. Can you hear me? It seems like the audio's going in and out.
No, we can hear you.
Okay, it's maybe just something happening on my end, but yeah. So my initial thoughts were that now we come to a time where black men are finally going to get some sort of repair for the discrimination that we've been facing for quite a bit of time. That's what I thought was going to happen, and just with you know, the fact that there's a black man in the office of the president, also, gave me a little bit of hope that something was, on the rise in terms of us being able to ameliorate our condition, just based on some of the past and, injustices that we had been facing. But, my initial thoughts were optimistic, but, as I, encountered academicians, and their understanding of the program and their political orientations about the program, I knew that this would be an uphill battle, to even get an idea like this off of the ground.
Right.
I remember, and this is just an anecdote. I was at a conference in Oregon. A lot of bigwigs were at this conference. It's like a American Philosophical Association, and well, actually, it wasn't the American Philosophical Association. It was it was PSYOP. That's what it was. So it's an American Philosophy conference, and so anyway, there was a feminist philosopher there, and we were having a tangential conversation, polite conversation before one of the sessions, and my brother's keeper came up, and the first thing this woman did, man, was talk about how the program would take away money from women and girls, black women and girls. And, she wasn't just saying this to me. She was saying this to, everyone around, and everybody wasn't black. And, and I remember an Asian guy, being from the institution from which I graduated, saying, he's kind of shaking his head like, like, why is there this competition over resources? Why is there this interest group, identity politics competition amongst you all? Like when you have a shared history of racism and,
Right.
some of the, things that black men have undergone, why would you, think that it would be something that would take away something from some other demographic, like for instance, yours? So, I mean, I already knew that after that, I knew that people were going to compete against it. Like the very idea of uplifting black men is anathema to some people.
Right.
So, I came to the conclusion that this will never get off the ground.
Right. Right.
Not in this political climate. So that's my understanding. I was hopeful, but I was also realistic about, people's perspective. And they just want to keep us down, man. It is what it is, man. It's no demographic in this country wants to see us elevated.
Okay. I feel you. Let me also welcome Brother Marcus Aurelius to the conversation. You know what I'm saying? Please support each one of the brothers' shows. If you have not checked it out, please go to their channels. That's one of the reasons I put the banners up so you can see the titles, the proper spelling, all of that good stuff. Go to their channels, support what they're doing. Marcus, the question on the table was, what was your first impression when you first heard about the My Brother's Keeper initiative coming out of Obama's office? What were your first thoughts?
My Brother's Keeper. I don't know if I'm familiar with it. Is that's not the thing where he chastised dudes for not being fathers, is it?
No.
This was more of a program that was designed around. It was supposed to be to uplift first black boys, but then it kind of melded into boys of color, and it was around giving them access, giving them support. But this was what year were we talking, BGS?
I would say, was it 2015 ish? 2014, 2015, something like that.
Yeah.
Almost at the end of his second term.
Oh, has it been 7 years since? I'm sorry, just the math hit me real quick. Shit is moving too fast. But anyway, yeah. So, here's the thing. There came a moment where, and this is something Gigi kind of alluded to a second ago. I get a text, and this was from Brittany Cooper, and it was kind of out of the blue for me, because I'd heard just a little bit about My Brother's Keeper. I didn't really think much of it. I didn't, have too much of an opinion. I had some questions. I didn't like that some of this wasn't federally funded. But I get this, I think it was a text from Brittany Cooper, and it was about something we're all familiar with now, right? We've seen this, especially with the latest Tina Knowles documentary. It was a petition, right, going around. And that was my first introduction to some pushback. And I want to extend the question to each one of you in order to give you guys a chance to go into it if you have any such stories. But What was the first indication of pushback? And I think Gigi may have preemptively answered this, but the first indication of pushback you got against black boys getting any kind of support, especially as it relates to My Brother's Keeper, BGS. What?
Oh, it was like with like within like a couple of a month or so,
Okay.
and then that would you actually hear women coming out, prominent women coming out talking about it's unfair that they didn't include girls in this program. And I was kind of confused, like the Asian man. I was confused. I said, we complain about the boys, we complain about the boys not progressing or not having any kind of help, and you get a program that's privately funded. It's not federal money, privately funded. I think that's probably why he went that way, to not, because it would have been a bigger fight if it was federally funded. The privately funded to actually uplift and give support to black boys as far as, education, tech, all that kind of stuff. And I said, why wouldn't black women want that for their boys? I was confused.
Okay. Now, for those,
Especially teachers and stuff like academics that know better.
right.
I was really confused.
So if you're not familiar, here we go. MBK, right? You can look a little more about the program.
Yeah, 2014. Yeah.
2014. And I'll put this link in the chat for anybody that would like to kind of delve into it, because I know this has been a few years. I mean, for most of us, it's not something we hear in casual conversation these days, but there was a period of time where it was quite the buzz. So let's go to Dr. Neal. What was the first pushback you noticed when it came to this?
I would say this, man. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
So at that particular time, I remember, on Facebook, and I had a lot of feminists on my Facebook page and everything. And initially, there wasn't a lot of, pushback from the feminists that I was friends with at that particular time. And there was some, prominent feminists who were supportive of it. Imani Perry, who's at Princeton University, she was supportive of it and everything like that. She has two adopted sons.
Mm.
But then later, as time progressed, that's when the pushback came, and some of the folks who eventually became signatories of the letter that was published in the New York Times, who I'm Facebook friends with, they were, expressing concerns about My Brother's Keeper and everything, and yeah, and so it's just competitive victimization.
Mhm.
It's just this very provincial, just view of the black situation, really at large, in black men and black women. And it was just another reminder that this ideology it's a narrow perspective on the situation of black people, man. So it was, like I said, initially it was affirming, and then later on, and you're right. You mentioned Brittany Cooper, and they just ran with it and just carried on Twitter, other parts of Facebook, and everything like that. And then you had a New York Times article, and what I did notice was that the feminists who did support it, who I saw supporting it, they were silent. They were silent
Mm.
about
Mm.
the pushback. They
Okay.
didn't. They didn't. They didn't go. They didn't go against the grain. They didn't say, "Well, this is needed" or whatever. You know what I mean? They just
Mhm.
fell in line.
Okay. Okay. Brother Gigi, you kind of touched on this earlier. If you had anything else to add on it, your first introduction to pushback.
Yeah, my first, pushback was the account that I gave you, but
Yeah. Yeah.
more came later. And nobody actually really told me that they were not supportive of it. I mean, I've read some of the things that academicians said. I've read what some legal scholars have had to say about it. I've heard about things in writing, and
Right.
I've learned the perspective of persons in writing. But that was the one time where I actually was shocked that you got this black woman who knows, I mean, she's an academician. She knows the condition that black men are in, and the only thing that she could talk about was interest group politics or identity politics, which, as Dr. Ronald Neal said, is basically, clamoring for, attention related to victimization. Well, we're all victims of the system. And so therefore, we're all going to need some sort of support or help in the future if we're going to remedy some of the conditions that, we're plagued by in this culture. And I don't think anybody is served well by, insisting that, one group don't receive help if the other group doesn't, get attention right now. But I mean, this is a part of the political philosophy of feminists, who basically assert that, all men to some extent or the other are privileged just by virtue of having a scrotum. So,
Right.
it is what it is. But, that pushback, it was startling to me. I mean, I couldn't believe it. It was unconscionable for me. And this was coming right off of the heels of Michelle Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow, which I referenced on another show that we did. But I mean, here you have damn near 1/3 of the black male population entangled in legal issues related to, vices. One could call drug addiction a vice, using either recreationally or even repetitiously. But I mean, who in American culture does not use drugs? I mean, Latinos use drugs, white folks use drugs, Asians use drugs, and none of them get arrested in the same way that we do. But we get these cases, and so that's coming off the heels of her program, her research. So I was optimistic. I was thinking that, things were going to happen. But this pushback, man, it's just like, okay, well, any evidence that comes out about what's wrong with us all of a sudden becomes a rallying cry for what's wrong with us. You get what I'm saying? And why we don't deserve assistance or help.
And let me just add this. Obama established an office for women and girls during his first term. There was already a state-supported entity in the Obama administration geared specifically towards women and girls.
Yeah. Now I'm gonna let Marcus kind of give some thoughts about this, and then I'm gonna read something to kind of give us a framework for how this was perceived. But Marcus, anything you want to add to it at this stage of it?
Yeah. So I'm going to be honest. I'm not familiar with this, but I am familiar with a bunch of other things that people have tried to do for black men and boys. Robert Smith being one example. You understand what I'm saying? Anytime, anytime anybody reaches out to us, again, I've said it many times. I feel like black women practice white supremacy. It's this fake. Oh, we want men and boys to get right, but they don't want the process of it to take place. They think that that's somehow in conflict with their own progress or whatever. Because again, I don't think that they really want what they say they want.
Okay.
The outcome, if we were to, get right, if black boys read better, right? And me and you, Doc, we discussed this on this show, even again, my own experiences. If the outcomes were to actually be produced, it's not what they want. It's not what they want. I think they think that, they would be Miss Celia or somebody in 2022. That's what they're afraid of.
But I want to actually take that, because that's a good suggestion to add that. You were referring to Robert Smith's the paying off for the loans for the young men coming out of Morehouse, right?
Yes.
What do you remember was the pushback being against that? What was the thing you heard at that time?
Well, first, I heard a few things. Number one, they were mad that he didn't do it for women, and then the other major thing was him having a white wife.
Right.
So they made him helping black men or black young men, black college students, about who he was married to.
Right. Which I argue all the time actually occurred with Obama. It just went a different way because Obama's wife was black, but my whole argument as far as that is that black women in particular, they didn't really vote for Obama. I think they voted for Michelle.
Yeah.
In a strange kind of way. And he was a proxy for that, because if he had a blonde haired, blue eyed wife, as far as many black women,
hell, white men wouldn't have voted for him either.
Nobody would have voted for him. Nobody. He wouldn't have been successful at all.
I go as far as to say they voted for Kamala Harris.
I agree. I really do agree.
They did.
I think that's one of the reasons. I mean, I think many were going to vote for Biden anyway, but I think once she ran, they voted for her. I fully agree with that.
Icing on the cake.
Oh, go ahead. What were you going to say, Dr. Neal?
No, so she was just icing on the cake.
Yeah. But I want to add this. Now, this is a piece written in 2014, Dax Devlin Ross, about Obama should rethink My Brother's Keeper, right? And so, just to give people a taste of what was going on at that time, this is one of the early pieces put out critiquing it, right? So he says, since President Obama introduced the initiative this past winter, My Brother's Keeper has been applauded and embraced by a diverse cross-section of people and institutions. Its shortcomings have also been on display. In June, more than 1,000 women of color signed a petition stressing their concern that the crisis facing boys should not come at the expense of addressing the stunted opportunities for girls. Last month, Columbia law professor Kimberly Williams Crenshaw, founder of Intersectionality, the ideology, raised a similar concern in a New York Times op-ed. And as my facilitator's message revealed, there are camps within the boys-only movement who worry that the of color tag will water down the racial issues at the heart of the initiative. For this faction, the situation is too serious, the moment is too precious, and the money is too modest to risk mission creep. But that gives us a good indication of what was going on at the time. Now, we're behind a paywall on this one. Okay. So, but this is what I was referring to. And as we flow through the conversation, we can definitely add different initiatives, different programs, different things we'll run across. But I wanted to start with My Brother's Keeper because for me, it was a wake-up call to a certain type of misandry that was alive and well in 2014, 2015. And I had dramatically underestimated its impact because I hadn't seen anything as palpably, supportive of black males. Although I was one of the people that had questions with this kind of men of color thing. I didn't know where that was going to go. But just the mention of black males came with a virulent response. And then all of a sudden this petition. And at the time, I wasn't where I am now. So I was kind of, my simp chip, as it were, was still pretty high. So I didn't really, know how to place it. But when Brittany contacted me, admittedly, I made the mistake of signing the petition, not really understanding the politics of the moment. But I did ask her, I said, well, isn't there a White House Council for Women and Girls? And she never responded, right? She just kind of disappeared. So this was still fairly early in my thinking as far as all of this. But now we get to a point where, as I pointed out before many of you got on the platform tonight, we started to see programs, PPP loans, the various things in 2020 that were targeted at black women as far as entrepreneurial, ventures. And then we started to see the Goldman Sachs's, the Googles, the Visas, coming forward offering black girls specific funding.
Okay. Yeah, even before that, remember the '90s with the micro business loans, the SUSUs. They were all targeted for women. They originally started doing it in third world countries, and they specifically would not loan it to the men. It was only loaned to women. Okay. And I think there were the places like Detroit, Chicago, and a few others where they started these programs. I think it might have been one of the banks. I can't remember which bank it was. It actually started giving micro business loans to get for women of color or black women actually start small businesses, but it never went to the men.
Okay. Well, so we see it. So then we're seeing indications of it not at the 90s, but it's definitely post 2014 where this is really something that I'm becoming aware of. So this is a part of my awakening. But with this petition, to either cancel it or open it up to girls, there was definitely a vehement hostility toward the very idea that a black male president do something for black males, right? That was definitely on the table. But now we're in an era where we're seeing all kinds of opportunities. Because one of the things I was going to reiterate for y'all up here was y'all have also seen citywide programs targeted at single mothers. Now I'm a single father. You know, there's definitely some help at various points I could have used, but you know, that's not the point. So the point is, you know, I started to see these programs citywide across the country popping up just for black single mothers, and yet again, no talk. So here's the crux of the question I want to ask, and once I put it on the table, we'll just, you know, y'all can just, you know, jump at it as you will. The crux of the question I want to ask is, how exactly do you view? Because I see it as hypocrisy, but how do you view this time period where 7 years ago, 8 years ago, you had these very women up in arms about a program for boys, not for men, not for black men, for boys, a program for boys that they were this livid at. Now, 8 years later, you see programming on a citywide, regional, statewide, national level for black women and girls, and not one petition being initiated by the very women that were calling out the injustice of only focusing on the boys during the My Brother's Keeper. Not one petition, not one public statement, not one media program, if anything. And many of us still don't know what Tina Knowles' documentary includes. I haven't seen it yet. I don't think it's out. But even still, it's been protested since, you know, as soon as the indication was made public. Not one statement about the absence of black males in any level of this new funding venture that's been happening on multiple levels from a variety of different sources. Any thoughts about that? And y'all can just jump in.
Well, you know,
go ahead, Gigi.
No, I mean, you know, look, at the end of the day, this is about attention and about who gets attention for being, like Dr. Neal said again, the most oppressed. And instead of looking at, you know, what we all need to do for each other, everybody's looking out for themselves, man. And so, you know, you got this crazy situation where, you know, these women, they have a different standard for themselves than they have for everyone else. I mean, you know, but this is just, you know, following the train of thought of feminist philosophy, which is a moral and a political philosophy. It's not really actually based upon the study of black folks and what black people undergo. It's about who gets attention, you know, who is in the media spotlight. And unfortunately, you know, this is what black politics has become reduced to. So to me, it's not surprising now, today, that you would have these women who basically, you know, they've basically developed this discourse that they're the most oppressed group and they've been neglected. They've never been, you know, centered. So now's their time to be centered. Now, so what we have to do is look at the outcome of this. I mean, I could be up in arms about it. I could be upset about it. I can say this is a double standard. I can say these people are acting in bad faith. But what will the outcome be 20 to 30 years from now?
Right.
You know, of all of these policies and these programs. And then in the meanwhile, a black man, like how long do black men have to, you know, check their privilege? You know, before they begin to say, look, I'm tired of, you know, having to acknowledge other people's oppression and my part that I play in upholding it without, you know, also being objective and impartial and saying, look, when you look at the data across the board, everything that women complain that they're victims of, black men are also victims of.
Yeah.
So what are we actually doing? Like, I mean, you know, like what we're doing is we're creating a hegemonic discourse. Now that's fancy terms, but ultimately a hegemonic discourse is a discourse that creates a script that everybody accepts unthinkingly about the nature of reality, about who's bad, who's good, about who's a dominator, who's an oppressed individual, who's a victim, who's a victimizer, who's evil, and you know, who's looking to exert power, and who's, you know, just a hapless, passive actor on the world stage, and full of virtue, and you know, just basically have an unfortunate lot in life. So the question is, you know, like when the smoke clears, when do we begin to look at the objective data compiled by sociologists and people who study the things that everybody complains about. Like, when do we begin to look at that data and understand that we have a problem across the board, and that we can't dichotomize virtue and vice into gender? Like, when do we begin to acknowledge that? Because I don't think we're actually moving forward to solve any problems. I don't even think it's a desire to solve any of these problems.
No.
It's just a desire for a certain group of black folks to clamor for tokenistic jobs and resources for themselves at the expense of other people who are doing way less well off than they are.
Yeah. Well, I would say this, Gigi. I'll give up my privilege when I actually get a privilege. Okay, when I get it, I'll consider giving it up. But until then, I don't know what the hell they're talking about.
But what we're talking about here is this. It's attention. Like right now, one of the things that they say,
attention is money.
But here's the thing. One of the things that they claim that gives us privilege is the foregrounding of our pain. So let's say, for example, and I think Dr. Johnson talked about this a couple of days ago. So a black man gets shot. It's on the news. So, George Floyd gets killed. Everybody is paying attention to George Floyd.
Okay.
Tamir Rice gets killed. Everybody's paying attention to Tamir Rice. Nobody's talking about trans women or black trans women, or nobody's talking about the black women, all 5 of them, that get murdered by the police every year. But, of course, there's like literally scores of men, black men, that get shot and killed by the police extrajudicially that nobody even knows about. Because nobody knows who they are. But the idea is that the overwhelming attention that's paid to men takes away attention from girls, and so therefore their issues never get highlighted. And I mean,
you know what the curious thing is, Gigi, that I'm scratching my head about, is that you had very high profile murder cases by white men toward black women, right? High profile murder cases, and all of a sudden, after a couple of weeks, their names just disappear.
Yeah,
but go ahead, man. I'm sorry.
Clear racism. Okay.
Let me just add this to it, though. Let's be clear. There's this misnomer that we just talk about black male death because everybody just loves black men, and this is the fundamental, I think, frustration that especially feminists tend to have, where we don't talk enough about black women. Everybody just loves black men and talk. No, first of all, that's not what it is. What it is since Emmett Till. Right? Since Emmett Till, the black men we talk about are either black men that died on camera, or the after effects of their deaths are on camera. Because at the end of the day, we're talking about an average of 200 to 300 black men killed by police per year. That doesn't include vigilante murders or lynchings. Right? The reason we paid attention to Rodney King, think about it. What would have happened to Rodney King if it was just another story on the news versus seeing the video?
Nothing.
Being beaten, right?
Nothing.
When we talk about the Trayvon Martins, when we talk now, I don't know how many of you got a chance to hear this, but I actually remembered the 911 call somebody made, and you can hear Trayvon while he was still alive fighting.
Yelling for help.
You can hear it. And then afterwards, of course, we get to the Michael Browns and the so on and so forth. There is a fascination and almost a fetish around black male death that is tied into this, because of the 2 or so deaths we do talk about per year, there are another couple hundred that don't even make the light of day.
So I want to say this, right? Because earlier it was mentioned that that black women are using like this to push their victimhood. This is how I feel about it. No, they're using victimhood for power and money.
Right.
The goal is resources and money and to maintain their position above us. Nobody wants to be us. Nobody want to be a nigga until somebody want to be a nigga. I fucked up the Paul Mooney shit, but
everybody want to be a nigga, but don't nobody want to be a nigga.
Exactly. So aside from that, like as far as us getting reported in the news and all these other things, I heard somebody else, I think it was Gigi, said, that we've all been through the same struggle. Actually, we haven't. Black man's struggle is not even equitable to black women. It's not even equitable. Like from slavery to now, it's not even the same. You know, we talk about, you know, top 10 causes of death. We talk about, you know, all of these other things. They want equal attention, and they're not going through equal shit. They're just not. You know, it's an all lives matter argument that they're making.
But this is what they'll say. But this is what they'll say. And look, I'm not saying I agree with this, but this is what they'll say. This is the kind of arguments they'll make. You're paying attention to black male death, to the neglect of black female death at the hands of black men. Right? So they'll say something like that. Or, you know, they'll say, and I know Dr. Johnson just gave me an idea for a video about a week ago. I know I've been kind of incognito for a minute. I just, you know, I'm trying to focus on something else, but I'll get back to the manosphere real quick. Probably tomorrow I'll probably be on. But the whole thing is, you make the case that there's something happening to you that's unjust, and they'll divert attention away from that by claiming that you're doing the same thing to other groups within the black community itself. Mm-hmm. So while you're facing external injustices, right, you're committing internal injustices to the black community itself. Now, of course, me being someone who studies what happens in the black community, right, I can say there's pretty much blame to go around. I mean, you know, like,
we can make
why? Excuse me?
No, I said we can make the same argument to them.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, it's not like there's a separate moral sphere and a different kind of, you know, moral compunction between black men and black women. The only thing that you could even begin to utilize in order to make the case that women somehow are more virtuous than men is this Victorian notion of womanhood, in which, right, you know, women are perceived as being the better half. Like, right, men are dirty and nasty and snips and snails and puppy dog tails, mm-hmm, and women are sugar and spice and everything nice. But I mean, you know, the startling thing to me is, and this is where I take umbrage with the kind of thinking that goes on in the university system, right? And with these feminist activists, right? They'll do everything they can to confirm their moral presuppositions or their political orientation. They'll deny evidence or ignore evidence or, you know, conceal evidence that explains the world in a way that doesn't fit in with their moral presuppositions or their political orientation. And this does nothing to solve the issues that they say that they're dedicated to solving to begin with. So I think Marcus is right here. Really, they're using victimhood as a means by which to procure resources for themselves. And it's a great strategy. I mean, like, if I were a woman and I wasn't orientated towards justice, I was just following the neoliberal capitalistic mindset like most people do in this country, I would do the same thing. I'd be like, well, let me use what I got to, like Lynn Collins said back a long time ago, I'm going to use what I got to get what I want.
But I think, can I say this? I think the other thing that we have to really consider are the people who are behind this, the funders, the white liberals, mm-hmm, the corporate people, and all of that. And the fact that they are convinced that only black women are worthy of any type of empowerment. And they are committed to only funding initiatives that target black women and girls. And so even before what we're seeing now with the PPP and the other initiatives, you had the people who were involved in, you know, what they're calling universal income. And in different parts of the country, I know they've done it in Washington. I know they've done it in Mississippi, where you've had these initiatives where female headed families are like given $1,000 a month with no strings attached whatsoever. Right. I know someone personally, a black woman, who was involved in in one of those initiatives. Okay, and so we have to really think about. I'm going to put it in terms of pimping. All right, so you have white liberals who function as pimps. Okay,
Mhm.
billion-dollar pimps who fund these initiatives in order to control the black population. You control the black population through the female, through the family, and all of that. The larger issue, and we haven't gotten there yet, and it's something that we need to think about, is pacification. Pacification. How do you pacify black people? How do you keep black people from not engaging in protest, rebellion, dissent, so on and so forth? You do that by giving these resources to these women who control the households, who control the boys, who control the girls, and all of that, and that ensures that you're not going to have any future rebellions. It's a
Mm,
pacification strategy.
mm.
They might not articulate it. Hell, no, they're not going to articulate it. So you're not going to come out and say it is what it is. But when you sit back and you look at it, and you look at white interests, these are white corporate interests that are behind it. These women are not generating these resources. They are not the ones who have the purse strings and what have you. They might be in the space, they're in the boardrooms, they're
Right.
talking to people and funders and all that kind of stuff. But who writes the checks? Who writes the checks, and why are they writing these checks? That's what we have to get at.
Well, let me welcome Dr. Thunder to the platform. What's going on, brother?
What's happening, man?
Hey,
What's
man.
happening?
Glad
This
to
is
hear
like
from
a
you.
oh, absolutely. This is like it's like a bunch of the cats that I binge watch their videos here. Oh my goodness.
Man, much
Um,
appreciation. But now, I know you have something to add to this because we were talking
yep.
about. We started this looking at My Brother's Keeper. We started this looking at the professional white collar women that had a petition out to either dismantle or reorganize My Brother's Keeper to include women and to include girls. And yet we move forward 8 years later, and there's a bevy of programs out on every level that really focus on black girls and black women more particularly, and there's no pushback whatsoever. What are your thoughts as far as this whole discussion? What comes to mind for you?
Yeah. So um, I did a live stream earlier today called what's in common. Uh, what is it? What is in common between affirmative action and black on black crime? And uh, one of the points that I made now, the answer to that question is there's disingenuous arguments that are frequently used, in particular by conservatives, when they want to hush up certain arguments. But one of the things that they do with this black on black crime thing, and 97% of the crime, in all this business, but for some reason only 13% in the white community are committed against white folks by white folks, which we know is not true. It's closer to 85%, right? So by highlighting that number over and over, it's disingenuous. Well, first of all, it's false, but then it's disingenuous if that's the only thing that you talk about. The same sort of things happens with affirmative action, where let's see here, what is it? 84% of the recipients of affirmative action are white women, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
But everybody has this sort of, all the conservatives have this anecdotal story where they have a cousin that lost out on a job, that was given to some, black person, in particular, some black man or something like that.
Mm.
Now, the thing is that because we know what the statistics are, we know that at best that's a statistical anomaly. But there's a lot of folks that have these sort of anecdotal experiences. Now, if you choose to focus on that and report on that, it'll make it seem as though that you know, black folks, in particular black men, have been given all these opportunities,
Right.
you know, that we don't deserve, right? And that stuff has already been put in place that's already helping us. Now, it may be the case that in the inception, at the beginning of affirmative action, that the goal was to help black men, but when Title IX got put in place, we know what happened is the emphasis switched. So now all of these institutions are incentivized to hire black females, right? And so they can sort of leapfrog. They can leapfrog black men. They don't even have to look our direction. And then diversity and inclusion is nothing but sort of affirmative action, sort of remarketed, repackaged, except for not even having the initial goal of serving black men. So now they don't even have to look at us at all. And I think that's part of the reason that you see these way out of balance numbers. You know, this figures that's been quoted frequently. And actually, the first time that I heard it was from you, Dr. T. Hasan Johnson, and that is the 20,000 fewer black men in the academy than black females.
Yeah.
Well, the reason you get there is because these institutions are incentivized to hire black women because they get to check two boxes,
Yeah.
right? Now, the reason that I don't think that this is going to change is I think of power as being finite. Okay, power is finite, and certainly the people that have power, they see it as being finite, and so it's going to be really, it's going to be, you know, you're going to be going up the rough side of the mountain to try to get folks that have power, black females, to slow down their, you know, their ascent in order to accommodate black men. That's not likely to happen. And the only chance of these women changing their perspective is something that I heard you say in one of your videos recently, and that's just the idea that when black women have sons, that's the only chance that there is to get them to even start acknowledging some of these other issues. They see their sons going through it. They're you know, the whole maternal thing and wanting to be protective of their kid, and they start thinking about it differently. I'll tell you, for me personally, what has caused me to really sort of up the ante in the kind of content that I create and the kind of conversations that I'm having frequently is, you know, my son is 8 that I create. And if there's any, if it's going to be possible to move this needle at all before the time where it's really going to be affect him, if any movement can happen, I gotta get to work. I got to do something now. And so I imagine that if there is any hope of changing this dynamic, it's going to be women that have sons. I interviewed Sister George, who was a black feminist, you know, and you know, she's sort of still kind of a feminist, but she's softened up on a lot of that stuff. But she's in the manosphere, and a lot of her talking points are straight manosphere talking points. And in our interview, it came out. I asked her about her kids. She has a son, right? And I don't think that it is a coincidence that she started to lean a certain direction once her son got to a certain age, because I think it's undeniable what is going on. If you care at all, it seems that you would at least. So I think the only chance for this stuff to change is through that window, but I think it's slim to none, and Slim just died.
Well, yeah. I mean, we tend to understand that, you know, we've seen the evidence. Boys are not often the focus in the black household. Generally, it tends to be girls, especially as far as academic aspirations and the faith of the mother in that regard. And boys tend to have less of an emphasis on that. So it's, you know, that's where the hope may be, but the evidence is suggesting that that's a real thin one. You know,
A lot of
but
them sell their sons out.
hey, well,
Yeah.
hey, hey,
I know I know Sister George very well,
oh,
very well. And me and her we done battle on Facebook.
Mm.
So I remember when she was on that other side.
okay,
So it's and I've been on their show on YouTube a couple of times. I mean, she's cool and but I think that yeah, she's definitely one of those women who is now sympathetic to some things because she has a little boy, and I know other women like that. But I would definitely say that these women are not the minority. I know a lot of women who have little boys and have
Mm.
no problem tossing them to the fire if it had to be about some real issues, some real resources, and some real money. Like
See,
it's
what's I'll tell you what. One thing that is incredible to me.
Mm-hmm.
See, okay, so once you're a parent or once you're a spouse, it seems to me that as a man or as a woman, the brotherhood or the sisterhood is a secondary issue. That's not that isn't your primary. Um,
It's not supposed to be.
right.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
that isn't right. That's not your primary thing. So
Yeah.
you shouldn't really be making decisions about how you're going to orient, what kind of information you're going to receive, and what stuff that you're going to have an issue with, based on other women.
Mm-hmm.
Often, often the case is like, okay, you so you make maybe some assessments about, say, for instance, the dating market, all of
Mm-hmm.
the goofy stuff that's going on right now, the superficiality, the way that our women tend to prioritize swag over substance. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you talk on this kind of stuff, and it's even a married woman,
Mm-hmm.
a woman that has won, she's already married. She will see it almost as some sort of slight against her. No, we're not talking about you. You already won the game. But it's like it's like too much to expect that they would be able to separate, the fact that they, you know, don't have a Y chromosome from, from other stuff that seems to me to be much more important. And let's let the world go to hell in a handbasket,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't want to hear you talking negatively about what do about other women, talking down on women and stuff. And it's like, dude, you already won.
Well,
You won. You're married.
gold, man.
Doc, the thing is, what you forget is you married into the gynocracy, not the opposite. Okay. Normally, a women marry into a patriarch or to a brotherhood, right? Because you marry a man, right? In the black community, Ados black community, it's the exact opposite. You marry into the gynocracy. You marry into like Dr. Johnson says, a gynoprotestal network. You become part of their network, not the opposite.
And then
And
I
and
think,
and what the network does is what the network says is what they go by.
yeah, and I think that, in the to add to that, I mean, we just have to acknowledge that black women across the board just have a very, very narrow view of black male existence. They just have a very, very limited understanding of the capacities of a black boy, of a black male youth, of a black man. It is deeply entrenched. It's a part. It's just deeply socialized. They don't even think about it. It's just normal to them. Across the board, black women have low expectations of black boys and black youth and black black men. I was watching recently the Netflix documentary on Kanye, and
mm,
I'm looking at his mother, Donda West,
mm-hmm,
and it's clear to me, and he was the only child. He's the only child. I grew up as the only child. His mother invested in him. His mother took time and nurtured and cultivated him. Kanye West would have been successful regardless of the path he took. Okay.
Okay.
But the point I'm trying to make is that that is not something that is pervasive in Black society. It is
Mhm.
not pervasive. It's not pervasive among the lower class. It's not pervasive among the working class. You might find it among some elements within the middle class, but across the board, it's simply not pervasive. And so it's going to take a miracle to see a tremendous psychological shift in the Black female population in terms of how they value Black male life and existence.
Well, and it would definitely take an environmental incentive because at the end of the day, I think what Dr. Curry said still holds true about this. He said, they strive to make attention outweigh death. And as long as that's the dynamic where you can actually sweep actual death under the table to focus on issues strictly that are targeted around the political advancement of one demographic over another, I don't know how more real it gets. But part of the way I titled tonight's episode extends another question to you all. I titled it "The Hypocrisy of the Black Girl Magic Movement for Equality," and I put equality in quotations, right? Because the basic assumption that I hear people still making to this day is that Black girls are behind and they need to be the focus because they're behind. But when you begin to look at the data, especially on the key issues that we tend to hone in on, we're talking about education, housing, whatever the dynamic you choose to look at. Empirically, Black males are behind. What happens when equality becomes a misnomer? What happens when the actual push for equality, which was, in terms of intersectionality, that was what this was all supposed to be about? What happens when those that need equality most are not Black girls or Black women, but happen to be Black males across age? What happens when that takes place? Now what?
Yeah,
And
so
I'm back to the group. Go ahead.
look, I think like you referenced Dr. Curry, man, about attention and death. But another thing Curry talks about is that like in the academy, we don't even study Black people. What we do is we continue to proliferate moral intuitions and make political arguments. When you start talking about equality, that's a political argument, right? And if you already have the mindset and you've already been inculcated in the academy, which is what you are, like if you go and take a humanities class, you're going to learn about the deplorable condition of Black women or women in general, okay, across the board. They're not going to give you a historiography of how feminists in the first wave basically used Black men as a means by which to promote their own interests. You're not going to hear that. You're just going to hear more often than not that these women were fighting for the right to vote. When it comes to second wave feminism, you're not going to hear, well, here was a political tactic utilized by white supremacists in order to subvert the ascendancy of Black men or their inclusion in this culture more generally. You're just going to hear that, women were not able to be employed and they were restricted to the home or the domestic sphere. And so therefore, women entering into the workplace is, a promotion of diversity, inclusion, and is aiming towards equality, right? You're not going to hear the backstories and hear the dirty conversations that were made in the back rooms about what all of this was about to begin with. Okay, so I think Dr. Neal's intuitions are correct, related to what the incentives are for these people, man. And what Dr. Thunder said. I don't know if I can absolutely agree with the Black women in virtue of them having sons are going to be more prone to understanding the plight of Black men because they have a boy. I think that there's a greater likelihood that they'll understand what Black men go through, but whether or not they'll actually begin to change this psychological disposition that they have, and it's been browbeaten on them by every major institution in the culture that we exist in. I mean, if you watch Lifetime television, you're going to hear about women being oppressed, but of course, as it pertains to Black men, the only way we can oppress Black women is through violence or sexual assault. That's it. There's nothing else for us to do. So they play up the role of us being savages and brutes in order to advance themselves socially.
Right.
But I'm like, I just think about all of this in contrast to what the movements of the 60s and the 70s were supposed to be about originally, which was, corporatism is not a good thing. Okay, who wants to go work for a corporate structure for 8 hours a day, 6 days a week, and maybe sometimes even more than that, depending upon how connected you are to the company. There was a resistance, against the idea of having to live your life in a specific kind of way. Namely that you abide by this whole Protestant work ethic, and in that way you're going to actually be worthy of having some sort of modicum of a good life. But now, that's all of these, the overarching superstructural arguments are not even in our purview anymore. They're not even being talked about. So when you talk about equality, it's only equality in reference to identity politics and playing musical chairs with corporatism.
Right.
Whatever happened to changing the basic structure of society to begin with so that everybody has a share, right? That's not even discussed anymore. It's not even part of the conversation, right? Economic issues are only issues related to, gender issues or sexual issues or, some other, I don't know, intersectional issue, right? So we're not even having the kind of conversations that liberals were supposedly having in the 60s and the 70s anymore.
Yeah.
Nobody's paying attention to the fat cats anymore. Okay, everybody just wants their share of pig feet, hog maws, and extra blankets, man. That's what
Everybody
they
wants to be
want.
the fat cats.
And-
Everybody wants to be a fat cat.
And I will say this. I'm going to say this until I'm blue in the face, until I can't say it anymore. And that is that these women are colonized. Okay.
Oh, yes.
These women are colonized. These women have accepted. They have accepted the imperatives of the American empire. They have accepted it, particularly your professional, educated class. And they are not going to let go of whatever crumbs they get from being colonial subjects. Okay?
Accept is the wrong word. I think embraced is a better word.
Embrace, yes. They've surrendered to it. They've given themselves over to it happily. And I, I share with a few of you guys. I had a recent publication that came out, international publication, where I talked about all of this stuff. And the thing is, man, when you look at colonialism across the world, particularly, from the 19th century, onwards, India, Africa, and what have you, the Brits, the French, the Dutch, so on and so forth, they did a hell of a job. They did a hell of a job of convincing Africans at the top, Indians at the top, other people at the top to completely submit to them. Okay, and so we're not what we're dealing with is no different from that. In the U.S., we don't like talking about coloniality in that kind of way because we want to think that we are a pure democracy, that equality actually exists. All right, and that's the thing. Equality is a myth. Equity is a myth. These are myths that are used to mask an entire imperial project. Okay. And we black men are just completely, we're victims of this imperial project. Okay. And I just give you an example. So even in my own studies, man, when you look at someone, I look at India, man. India is a wonderful place to study, man, in terms of all this stuff. You have Mohandas K. Gandhi, who led, the nonviolent movement in India, and you had his nemesis. Gandhi was a Brahmin. He came from the top part of the caste system. You had another man his name was B.R. Ambedkar. He was at the bottom. He was an outer caste. He was an untouchable who ended up getting an education. Ambedkar, who was an untouchable, went to war with Gandhi. He went to war with Gandhi over the evils of the caste system. Okay. And so what we're doing right now is no different from what he did. Okay. Because although Gandhi is praised for bringing about Indian democracy, and he was a part of the end of the British Empire, at the end of the day, he still remained committed to a certain type of elitism, a certain type of privilege that his society and culture had accorded to him. And what I'm saying to all of us, brothers, is that we're dealing with a similar dynamic here in the United States with these women. And they have been brought into the power elite, they have been brought into the mainstream, they are useful as colonial subjects, and they have given themselves over to all of that. That's what we're dealing with.
So,
Hey,
Absolutely.
can I jump in for?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I interviewed Bernard Riley on my Conversations with Dr. Thunder series. I interviewed him on this past Monday, and that interview went up on Tuesday. And one of the things that we talked about, he recently put a clip up on his. It was a clip out of one of his live streams, and this shout out to Mr. Palmer. This simp enforcer was basically claiming that he was questioning folks. He says, "Well, tell me about this power. You seem to think that women have power. You seem to think that, right?" And he was unwilling to acknowledge that women actually have aligned themselves with power, that they do have this certain kind of power. Totally swallowing wholesale, these regular talking points that the feminists use to try to convince people that they don't have power, that they're still some sort of victim class, that that men are still their oppressors, and all of this foolishness. It's amazing to me, see, to me, it's like, okay, I suppose I'm okay with there being a sense of, certain people having a certain privilege. Maybe I'm not totally okay with that, but at least be willing to acknowledge that you have the privilege, right? So it's like, they have this privilege, but if you point at it and say, look, here's your privilege, they won't even, they keep trying to hide the ball, so that they can exploit that sort of ignorance about, if they have this privilege or not, as a way to get more privilege,
I think,
and to get more power.
No, I do think so. I agree with that. I think one of the things that I've been looking at, the way I've been looking at this, is we're seeing the use in a colonial construct, and I agree with Dr. Neal on that. I think we're seeing the use of the carrot versus the stick, right? Black men get the stick. Black women are getting the carrot, and I think the carrot is a kind of nominal buffer class status. You're not going to be at the level of white women, but at the same time, you're going to be employed more often than not. You're going to have a degree of status. You're going to be able to look at the media and see yourself, be it in magazines or television channels that are targeted toward you, right? And you're going to know in that incentive structure, that environmentally incentive structure, that it's your girls that are going to have more traction in that system than your boys. All of these different, things, emphasize the same point, right? I called it female ascendant policy. It targets girls as the center focal point of action. And I've been hearing this rhetoric lately, especially. This is our time, right?
Yes, it is.
Our time, where it's our time to rise. So you have, especially this year, you had the first Black History Month since Kamala Harris is elected to the VP, right? And so much of the advertisement for Black History Month I saw was targeted around Black women. And then that rolled right into Women's Month, right? Women's History Month. And so in some respects, it was like almost a repeat of the same thing with some sprinkles of other women. And so when I look at this kind of advertising, approach, when I look at this kind of rhetoric in popular, media, what I see is this kind of invitation to a nominal, surface level, substance free kind of environment where you have the illusion of access, and you get, you know, nominal little baubles. You know, I think you guys called it earlier. You get a blanket for the winter. You know, you get an extra cut of ham, so to speak. But it's enough to sell out the boys. It's enough to sell out the men. And the vitriol level after generations of this kind of programming has snowballed to such an effect that when I read the petition, which last I checked was in the 8,300 range to get rid of Tina Knowles' documentary, the vitriol was so intense. The hatred toward black men was so intense. And none of us even know what the hell the documentary said.
Doesn't matter.
But here's the thing. If you've been hearing, if you're a young girl going to college, right? And I've seen this. I've seen girls transform in college, man. You know, after taking African American studies courses, feminist courses. I've seen them transform from being, you know, little girly girls to all of a sudden these girls are like shaving their heads. You know, coming out as queer. You know, and like if you're told on a consistent basis that there's a source of pathology, and that pathology is ontologically connected to black maleness, and or either it's culturally connected to black maleness because of the sort of privileges that black men enjoy in society in general, and that, you know, black men want to assert power and control over people who are weaker. And look, the only way that they can claim that they're weaker, see, when you start talking about strength and power, people, especially men, they only think in terms of physical power, right? Like, I have the power to beat somebody up, like as if that's the only form of power that exists. I mean, to me, it's just naive. I think, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, I think black men are hermeneutically challenged. They don't know how to interpret their own reality, and they haven't been taught to, right? No one's teaching us how to be devil's advocates against positions that or discourses that are, you know, popular, that stigmatize and caricaturizes. They don't know how to push back, and they're basically shamed when they do push back and, you know, name call. And this is new though. I mean, because in the 60s and 70s, you had black men all of the time coming out and saying, well, you know, wait a minute. Like Ishmael Reed, and I mean, there's others, but I can't name them now. But there were other men who were willing to push back against these narratives. Now, in the academy, black men are going out of their way in order to demonstrate that they're promoting the interest of black women and girls to their own detriment, and not even studying the objective reality of black life. Right? I mean, and don't care to study black life. The only thing they want to do is, you know, basically express what is popular now in the virtue signaling grandstand. And I think the biggest problem with us is that, and I'm referring back to Curry again, we don't study black folks. We don't even want to study black folks. All we want to do is push politics and morality, moral intuitionism. And it's going to get us nowhere. And another thing, black men are inextricably connected to black women. There's no way to get over it. Like, unless you can change a fact about biology, whereby men are able to produce children from their scrotums. Every man that's born comes out of a woman. There's no other alternative. So if you believe that part of your seed or the fruit of your womb is tainted ontologically, then what does that say about you? It says that there's something ontologically tainted about yourself. And this is why that documentary that Dr. Neal referenced earlier is important. If you tell a black boy that the world, especially from his mother, that the world is his, and if she's his biggest supporter and cheerleader, there's nothing that boy can't do. I mean, you know, like, but if you've got the mentality that this Negro lazy, I mean, you got women calling the police on their own sons. They're 8, 9, 10-year-old sons. Like, I'm gonna teach you a lesson. I'm gonna put white folks on you.
Your daddy wasn't nothing, and you ain't nothing either.
If that's the mentality that you have about your own children, we are doomed. We're done. Because, like, think about the resistances that, happened in Vietnam. Or even in Haiti. These women were like die hard for their own culture and their own people. They weren't, creating these superficial divisions predicated on moral intuitionism and political philosophy that seeks to, try to, project yourself as the biggest victim. These, the women in Haiti during the revolution were participants. I mean, if there's anybody like the Wakandans, it was those ladies, because they had machetes, and they were ready to slice and dice. Now ask yourself, I mean, at some point, black women had this kind of mentality. At least if it wasn't, violent resistance and struggle, at least it was a spiritual or a mental or a moral struggle. Now, all we've adopted is the narrative of people who we know don't mean as well. Like, if you can tell me that you can forget 200 years of slavery, 100 years of Jim Crow, and now go with a narrative that the people who oppress you the most are your sons, your fathers, your brothers, and your uncles.
Right.
If you could convince a group of people, women, of that lie, then you're doomed. Because you don't have a cultural ethos. You don't have a political reaction. If your only politics is, how can I get in as a token?
Right.
I don't want to run the table. I just want a seat at the table. And I want a bleacher seat. I don't care about, I just want to get in the arena. I don't care if the seats are bleacher seats. I don't want to own the arena. I don't want to run the arena. I just want to be there. I want to work as a concession worker in the arena.
Bro, this is if you can't beat them, join them, man.
Yeah.
That's what this is. This isn't about trying to run nothing. This is black women going for their white status like the Italians and the Irish and the rest of them.
Exactly.
We haven't seen one gender try to do that without another within one racial group. That's what's unique.
But what I want to say, is that but the Italians were after power. The Irish are after power. They were after real power. Okay, the Kennedys were after real power, and they achieved real power. Okay, and what we have here is, you have black women who are addicted to the illusion of power through representation. I mean, there is no power in just being seen. There is no power in just being on TV and having the camera in front of you. Okay, you look at Asians. Look at Asians in California. You look at Asians on other part of the country. All right, Asians, we hardly see them anywhere represented. All right, they're part of the diversity calculus and all of that. But the way that Asians are moving, whether we're talking about the Chinese, the Japanese, the Koreans, so on and so forth, they're moving in terms of power. The way in which Asians have attacked affirmative action in this country, that is about power.
But that's the men in their group doing that. Understand, right? When you talk about these groups that I mentioned, when they go after power, it's the men in their group that are doing it. And not only that, they have the benefit of not being us. We are the out group.
Right.
Although they're from wherever they're from, there's no concentrated efforts to block Asians and the rest of these men, because that's who we're talking about. When we're talking about, these other ethnic groups, we're talking about their men, right? So when it comes to us, we're talking specifically about us. Like if we were to chase power, right? Those efforts would be blocked because it's us. Now they ain't gonna block our women. I mean, if Asian women were seeking validation and this and that, then we can have that conversation, but they don't have to, because their men are not being, systematically like held down, right? Right.
Yep.
This whole, I just want to say these things. This whole, like all this black girl magic stuff, right? Sounds great, right? Sounds great. right? But black girl magic seems to need a lot of help, right? For them to tell us, bootstraps, right? Everybody else gets bootstraps. If everybody else is so magical and so, superior and so supreme, why do everybody else get shit handed to them, right? We talking about the letter groups. We talking about, white women. We talking about, everybody. Black, we're the group that says, the only group that says you got to do it yourself, right? This country, the state gives things to everyone because they understand that to a certain degree, for a group to get ahead, a group to prosper, right? Not only do you need to get out the way, right? Because two things are happening. Not only are we not helped, but we're blocked.
Right.
That's two things happening at the same time. All right. Now, when we talk about women not wanting these things to take place, understand this. If this was about equality, those things we were talking about earlier that were, put together for women, they protest that, but they don't. What they do is they throw it in our face. The things that they get from the state, they taunt us with it. Hey, look at what we got. Y'all don't got it. We're ahead of you, right? When it's just us in the room, you go on Facebook, you go anywhere, black women will say, we leaving y'all in the dust. But then when Zaddy in the room, oh, we the victim. Oh, we're repressed. Help us. The black men are, they're holding us down, and we need, empowerment and all of this other stuff. They play the victim on the world stage, but in the hood, they'll tell you in a minute, you're conquered, you're powerless, and all this other stuff, and they'll call the cops on you. All right. Now, earlier we were talking about mothers and their sons. Okay, like Gigi said, it's more likely that a woman with a son will be sympathetic to black boy or black male issues. But let her have a girl. Because we're talking about women with only sons, right? Only sons. You have one kid and the kid is a boy. Well, let that woman have a girl. And let's see who they prioritize. Okay? So let's not leave that out. And they talking about black girl magic, and like Tupac talking about Mama made miracles every Thanksgiving. No, Uncle Sam made miracles every Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Let's go.
And that's why. And this is why.
Okay.
This is
all
why,
right.
This is why I'm saying that
Land my plane.
we have to talk about. This is why we have to, really accent the illusion of power, the illusions that come with representation, and all that. The fact of the matter is that the black women that we're talking about, they are not sophisticated political thinkers. They're not sophisticated when it comes down to politics, power, and all these things. They're very juvenile. They're infantilized. Standing next to white people for them is the end all be all. Having access. There is nothing substantive about having access. There's nothing substantive to being absorbed into a diversity initiative. Okay? And what we're dealing with is a psychology that has been cultivated across the decades that is just entrenched, that at the end of the day is tragic, because as I've said in other places, at some point, these white people, if they continue to control the United States of America, and as they continue to bring in more groups into this country, they're going to move away from black women. They're going to move away from them. My prediction is that the Latina woman is the one who's going to replace her as the face of diversity, as the face of all this stuff. She is next in line. She's going to be the one. And they're not prepared for that. And they're not preparing for that reality. They're not even talking about that among themselves.
No, they think it's permanent. They think what's happening now is a permanent status shift.
Yeah.
That
their time has arrived.
Yeah, I wanted to say this thing, and Marcus Aurelius was keeping it 100. He was keeping it 100. Let's go. But I did want to say this one thing. This is an interesting. So with the black girl magic thing, you know, I mean, we're being critical of an aspect of this right now, but in general, that's something that's celebrated. And black men, we don't really have an issue with black girl magic, right? Like the saying, the slogan, the T-shirts, the girls, having the the sequined blinged out shirts that say black girl magic and stuff like that. That's not really a big issue, right? But we don't think of it as being a statement of fact. I mean, to my knowledge, black women and black girls are pretty underrepresented as magicians. So we don't take it as being a a statement of fact, and we don't think that they're talking about witchcraft, right? So we don't take these to be statements of fact, right? So then how come is it that I bought a shirt from O'Shea that says black men are perfect. Now, how come you're going to have some big issue with a shirt that says black men are perfect, but you okay with black girl magic?
Black men are beneath them. Black men are there to serve black women.
I said that
Somebody's over
today.
there laughing.
I said that today.
That means
So what?
it's obvious that black men are here to serve. At what point in our lives, the way we're trained, that whatever we do is not even in service to black women, including sex. Me and Doc were actually talked about that just yesterday. Even in the sexual act, which is supposed to be where men are supposed to be dominant, right, and women are supposed to serve. How in our ego, the way black men have sex, do we do it for ourselves or we do it to please our partner?
Oh no, partner. Yeah, our status is even our sense of self status is in how pleased she is, and if she's pleased to the point of unconsciousness, we're the man. We're the man. It is what it is. Yeah. I don't hear any. I don't really hear too many other groups talking like that. But with black men, oh yeah.
The first time I heard really heard a red pill white dating coach, and the fact that he says that the woman's orgasm was not important. I clutched my pearls and I fell out the chair, man. It was stunning to me. I said, you know how you look over your shoulder like hope nobody's listening. Like, did he just say that?
Oh my lord!
Oh my God!
Hey,
So inappropriate.
hey, Doc, I ever told you what my Dominican Republic story?
Oh Jesus! What happened?
Is
Okay.
it safe for work?
Yeah, it's safe for work.
All right, go ahead.
And Doc Neal, I want you to pay attention to this because you done been down to those areas, man. And this is referring to what you just said. So I know a guy in Brooklyn. He owns like 3 liquor stores. So when I went to DR, did the Sosua thing, and Sosua is not safe for work. So I'm gonna leave that part out, right? So then I went to Punta Cana. My man comes to pick me up. The same guy, liquor store owner, millionaire guy, comes to pick me up. We go from Sosua all the way to Punta Cana. This guy's wealthy, fabulously. We get over there, right? So I'm with him and his boy and their 2, I don't know, wives, girlfriends, whatever. We get all the way out to Punta Cana. Guy got a fabulous spot out there, whatever. So the next, he shows me to my room. We spend the night. So next day, they call me down. They got the housekeeper there. She made breakfast, and his girl is there, right? So his girl serves us breakfast, right? So we sit at the table. She sits on the couch and reads a book. She doesn't sit with us.
Okay.
So we eat, we talk. As soon as we're done, she comes to get our place, takes them to the kitchen. We on our way out. Then she fixes herself a plate and eats by herself. All right. I'm saying this to, you know, because I'm talking about what you said a second ago. It tripped me out. Because we're not used to that. It tripped me out. But then I'm like, if it was like this, we'd have less problems. Not to say that I want to lord over anybody. You understand what I'm saying? But just, I have to examine why I found it odd.
Okay. Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Because it was such a shock against what you had always seen.
Yeah.
Just seeing the opposite, not the opposite necessarily, but seeing it that way was such a shock to the system.
Yeah, she sat over there. She didn't even eat the same time we did.
Yeah, I think there are customs around the world that would throw many a black man off like that, or we've never seen that.
Yeah, and the wrong person would have been like, you know, oh, why are you doing her like that? She can't eat with us. Why don't you come over to the table, eat with us? You know, you get the simp dude. Well, why she can't eat with us? Why she over there? Was she beneath her? You understand what I'm saying? But of course, in those countries, there's no state-sponsored feminism.
Okay.
Right?
And the other thing is that she's benefiting from this man, right?
Absolutely.
He has been incentivized to go out there and to bust his butt and to have properties, to be a boss, to do all these other things, okay? And she gets the benefits of all of that. You understand what I'm saying? And even it goes back, even my earlier example, man, Kanye and his mom and all that kind of stuff. His mother prioritized him.
Yeah.
And at the end, and this is not a story like the NBA or the NFL, the kind of story that we have with, you can't compare Kanye to a Kevin Durant. You can't compare Kanye to a LeBron James. You can't compare Kanye to your typical kind of athlete story, okay? Where you have these guys who come from hardcore poverty and they get super lucky and they make it to the NBA or the NFL. No, she invested, Donda West invested in him from the very beginning.
But Dr. Neal, now I haven't really been following this, but didn't Kanye make some statements about his father and the way Donda, played a role in their current relationship? Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, he talked about alienation, parental alienation, that was there, and he felt that he did not have the type of contact with his father that he should have had, and I think in his adult now as a 40-something-year-old father, it has totally kicked in what his own father had went through, and that was a real thing. But even with that, it's clear that Kanye did not grow up in a situation where he heard black men ain't ish. He did not grow up in a situation where he heard a great deal of negativity writ at large about black men. And that his mother, and a lot of it had to do with the fact that he was an only child. She didn't have any other children. And so all she had to do was focus exclusively on him. Also, she was the educator. She was professional, PhD, Chicago State and everything like that. That helps tremendously. It helps tremendously. She was middle class, okay? But the point is that if you extend that beyond the mother-son relationship and you transpose it on other dynamics with women, all you're going to get is, I'm going to say it, you're going to get success. You're going to get men who are incentivized to excel, to be to be everything they have to be. And the women and the feminists have got it twisted. Their orientation towards it is the reverse. The idea is that if you invest in a man, there is nothing in it for you. That you have to sacrifice him. You have to put him on the altar in order to advance your own interest. And that's unfortunately the dynamic that we are railing against right now.
Yeah, I spoke about that earlier. I mean, you have to actually think about the trajectory of the kind of politics that we're in now. I mean, and to be quite honest, third wave feminism to me, or intersectional feminism, is nothing more than an extension, a racial extension of second wave feminism. Okay? And what I mean by that is, of course, the first wave was about voting rights and political equality, right? I want to be able to vote just like white men can vote. Okay, although white men only received the right to vote in writ large maybe 40, 50 years before white women were able to get the franchise, okay?
It was landowners mainly.
Yeah, I mean, well, prior to that, you had to be wealthy
Yeah.
in order to, enjoy the franchise. So, but eventually, men fighting through wars and things of this nature were able to secure the franchise, and then eventually it was extended to women. But so that's the scope and the range of first wave. But the second wave feminism was all about women entering into the corporate world. It was a bunch of white bourgeois women who were lamenting about what they called, comfortable concentration camps, being the home. Like they wanted to explore more. They wanted to go out there and be working women. They wanted to have sex freely and wantonly, or whatever the case may be. And then, coupled with the sexual revolution.
Right.
But third wave feminism is nothing more than a racial extension of second wave feminism. And that's why I tried to show these debates. Has, the women's movement been a spectacular disaster? And I went through showing that. Right now, these women are obsessed with careerism and attention related to careerism. But in the end, I mean, there are a whole host of philosophers. I mean, Heidegger among them, like McIntyre, Alasdair McIntyre. These people are critical of careerism and neoliberalism and the toll that it takes on the human person. I mean, like, if all you think that life is about is going to work and keeping up with the Joneses, and this is also why I tried to, outline the philosophical implications of Rousseau. Like, man is born free, but everywhere is in chains. And we're in chains precisely because everything is about keeping up with the Joneses in the superficial economic structure that we have. It's bullshit, man. And the only people who benefit from this musical chairs game that's being played along the lines of identity politics are the fat cats, who basically, what do you bring to the table? They own the building. They don't have to bring anything to the table. They own the edifice. They own multiple buildings. It's no strange secret that only 2% of the American population, man, they own over 50 to 60% of the wealth.
Yeah.
And we're sitting here arguing over attention, like who gets the most attention. Our issues aren't paid attention to. We get overlooked. I'm looking at the bankruptcy of sophistication of black politics contemporarily, and I'm mystified by it.
Yeah.
How did we get to this point?
And I think a part of it, feminism is a major part of it, but also I think it's also the civil rights generation, the educated boomers who pushed this idea of desegregation and black people entering into white spaces and becoming the first black this and the first black that and everything like that. And this idea that somehow or another, if we get closer to white people, that we will see paradise. Okay, and I think that is also part of it. And the reality, and I agree with Gigi. I mean, the fact of the matter is that there is a glass ceiling. There is only so far that you can take careerism, and you see this, and even Kevin talks about this, and he's right about this. Once they hit 35, 36, 38, 40 years old, that career thing starts to fall apart, bro. It starts to fall apart. And what do you have left after that? If you have no relationships, if you have no community, you have no family, you have no connection or village outside of work. Work is soulless. It is soulless. You cannot, work alone cannot sustain an individual, male or female.
But see, I think. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. And I think they've bought into that, and they've sold it, and they continue to sell it to generation after generation. Now, of course, with the student loan situation, the millennials are really they're feeling it hard now because that whole model ain't working for them.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah.
because they're
Shout out to
because
Bill.
because
Shout out to Bill Clinton. Yeah.
yeah, because you got
Uh,
you got millennials who are in their 30s, and they've got
Hmm.
hundreds of $1,000s in debt.
Hmm.
They can't pay the debt. They can't get married. They can't feed themselves. They can barely pay their rent. Okay,
Hmm.
and that whole model is crashing and burning right before our eyes. And Joe Biden has yet to do anything to rectify it.
See, and
well,
what I think you're hitting the crux of what I've been trying to get at, especially with this whole buffer class model. I never believed this push for for offering black women buffer class status was at all permanent. I don't believe it's permanent at all. But I think the question is, and this is where I think you went with this, Dr. Neal, is what is the long-term impact of this? Right? You have a group now, and I think this is where black folk are the most dangerous as far as American history is. I charted right around the civil rights era because you have global access to media, right? Especially during the Cold War. This whole question of whether or not America has the model for the world to follow. And then you got these little Negroes who are being attacked by police and dogs, old women, everything on camera. Again, on camera, right? So all of a sudden, this small little black community that ain't nobody cared about now all of a sudden has a microphone in its face, and they're talking about oppression, they're talking about exploitation. This is highly dangerous as far as this idea about what culture America is and what it has to offer the world. Now, this incentivizing of one demographic or a couple, whether you want to talk about women, when you talk about LGBT, but the incentivizing of particular groups and the elimination of black boys and men from the discussion is going to have an impact on the community that has not been properly analyzed and theorized about. And I think it's when we look at the next generation, I think we're seeing the seeds of it now. BGS
Yeah.
talks about this all the time in
Hmm.
terms of Generation Z and the lack of race loyalty as far as
Hmm.
coupling is concerned. And I think
Right.
there are other indications as well. This is going to have a dramatic impact on how the black community even conceptualizes itself because there's so much going on. There's so many resources being extended. There's so much attention being fought over. And yet everybody's comfortable with watching black boys being trampled underfoot.
So
Nobody
so
has a problem with it.
I
And
mean,
it brings,
so Joe Biden in his State of Union address talked about not defunding the police. Okay.
right.
I'm just gonna say this here where I am in North Carolina, man. Uh, Negroes are off the chain. The folks, the underclass, the young people under the age of 25, they getting killed left and right where I am. Okay, there are people who are it is the wild wild west in
Hmm.
Yeah.
my neck of the woods.
Yeah.
Okay, and no one knows how to properly address it. Okay, because of all that we have not prepared for prepare for this because there is no safety net for this emerging generation. There is nothing in place for them. They cannot rely on quote unquote the false promises that black women have bought into.
Mm.
And so my concern is that we're getting ready to watch another iteration of Jim Crow Joe. If it's not
Mm.
Jim Crow Joe, it's
Hmm.
going to be somebody else. I
Hmm.
think I'm concerned that we're going to see another crime bill. I'm concerned that we're going to see other extreme measures to control this population that doesn't have anything waiting for them. That's the other beyond it, and the part of it. So yeah, the race loyalty is gone because what happens is Cornel West talked about this decades ago. It's kind of like nihilism. Talk about nihilism on
Hmm.
Mhm.
steroids,
Hmm.
where it becomes dog eat dog. When you're
Mhm.
talking about, I'm talking about Darwinism,
Yeah.
hardcore Darwinism. Uh,
Yeah.
Hmm.
I read a story right here in my town where I live. Four young black women were at a cookout restaurant at 11:30 p.m. on a Sunday night, and they got into altercation with some guys, and those guys shot the car down. The guys had the guys had guns. They pulled the windows down and they blew all these young women. 4 women in the car. I don't. The news story did not say all. It didn't have all the details of what happened, but that is indicative of the fragility
Mm.
of Black life right now,
Yeah.
and that
Social,
this stuff is on steroids. We
social
thought the
contract is
90s.
gone. Yeah.
We thought
Social
the
contract is
90s.
gone.
We thought those of us who are Gen Xers.
Mm-hmm.
We thought the 90s was bad.
Yeah.
With the crack era.
Yeah.
Okay. We don't know what's gonna happen around the bend with this situation that we're dealing with right now. You're talking about dog eat dog. Gigi can talk to this. You're talking about Hobbes in the state of nature.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
That stuff is real.
Yeah, so my thoughts are this. That murder is a young man's sport to begin with. Like, you ain't got 50, 60-year-old guys out there trying to prove their manhood by showing how tough they are anymore. If anything, the old guy's gonna pull one of them, slick moves and keep it pushing.
Mm-hmm.
That's just how the game goes.
Trying to
You
get out trying to get out without getting hurt. Yeah.
Yeah, unless he thinks like a young-minded individual, which means that he hasn't really grown up and matured to begin with. Some of us have our bad moments. I mean, we're human beings, and so we take offense to being violated. But, we haven't learned conflict resolution skills at all. I mean, from male to male, male to female, female to female. We don't know how to resolve conflict without resorting to violence, or without resorting to insults, or without delivering, proclamations that are final in scope and in range. Meaning, you're no good. Or I got to end you. Mm-hmm. It's the end of you. There's no way for us to, smooth the situation out. It's always final. Okay? And I think, more than anything else, and black men are just like this, as well as black women, but it's just articulated in different modalities. It works itself out in different ways. We don't love ourselves. Mm-hmm. That's a problem. We don't love blackness. And the proof of it is what we do and how we talk to each other and how we interact with each other. Like, at the end of the day, the quality of your life is dependent upon the quality of the relationships that you have with people that are supposedly dear to you.
Yeah.
What happens when you don't have anyone that you're dear to? The only thing you're dear to is the bag. That's the Matrix, really. Mm. That is this is what, to me, the red pill is, an analogy to the Matrix, but the Matrix is an analogy or an allegory of Plato's the allegory of the cave.
Cave,
yeah. And the point is, what really do you honor and respect, and what do you perceive as wise in relation to how you live your life? What's a life well lived? Mm. If the only life that you have in your mind's view is that the life well lived is being like this wealthy dude making a certain amount of money and being able to, floss and flex, or, at the bar or something like that, that's all it's about. Mm. And you don't have any quality people that you could depend upon to talk about your joys, your troubles. What's life worth, man? Because there are some happy people, man, that don't have none of that, but do have quality relationships. And they live a lot stress-free than even the people who are supposedly in these successful positions. And so, we have to learn how to love each other. I was retracing my steps of some of the videos I did, and it was brought to my awareness, the dial test.
Okay.
You put a white dial in front of black kids and a black dial in front of black kids. You ask them, what dial is the white dial? Which one is the black one? Which one is the good one? Which one is the bad one? Which one is the pretty one? Which one is the ugly one?
The smart one.
The smart one, yeah. Yeah. Most of these black babies, and it's important for people to understand, your character development is set in stone for the most part by the time you're 13 years old, man.
Yep.
If you don't love black folks by the time you're 13, man,
yep,
and you think you're ugly and you think you're dumb, you think that about, if you're pointing at a black dial and you saying that's an ugly dial, that's a stupid dial, You're gonna take your information, because that's an internal projection of what you think about yourself. You're gonna take that and apply it to other black folks, man. And that's why you see amongst black men, you know, this nihilism, because we don't even know how to work out our love for each other, because there ain't no love.
We've internalized white supremacy.
And here's the thing. The thing is that so we're talking about black girl magic and all that kind of stuff. Here's the thing, and what bothers me, so much of it is detached and removed from the black freedom struggle. It is removed from the historical impulse, the efforts of black people who came before them in the past to deal with anti-blackness in the United States. Okay, so that is when we go back and we talk about the classical figures. We can talk about King and talk about X and talk about Garvey and Washington and Fannie Lou Hamer and Ella Baker and all these people. The thing that these people had in common was that they were concerned about the quality of black people's lives and what was going on from the very bottom to the top. And what we're dealing with right now with this enfranchised group of women is a complete divorce from this entire tradition and history of struggle. And no one calls it out. No one calls it out. So BGS just did a commentary on a video produced by Hezekiah News with Farrakhan back in the early 1970s.
Right.
That whole sensibility, and Gigi, Dr. Johnson, and myself, we talked about, you know, the whole question: what happened to black nationalism? Okay, at the core of those movements in the 70s was this deep concern of the quality of lives that black people have and what's going on from the bottom to the top.
Right.
And what we're doing now, what is happening now with the enfranchisement of these women, is that there is a divorce from that. They are exclusively concerned with being at the top. It is as though, here's the thing, it is as though nothing happened before 1980.
Right.
Nothing happened.
Right.
It is a complete divorce from black struggle, and that is the most a problematic aspect of what they're doing. Because here's the thing, for me personally, I would not have a problem with where they are if where they are was connected, if it had a linked fate to the rest of black society. That is, if it had a direct connection to black men.
Right.
That is matriarchy. So we're talking about matriarchies in Africa. Matriarchies in Africa were invested in men.
Yes, they were.
Matriarchies in Africa were not simply about women being self-aggrandized.
The Jewish community is a matriarchy.
There you go. The matriarchy in its classical form is concerned with the development of the entire community. The matriarchy in its classical form in Africa and other places is concerned with male development. So we don't have a real matriarchy in the traditional sense. What we have is we have some alien gynocentric entity that is completely caught up in American decadence, Western decadence, self-interest, self-aggrandizement, egoism that takes black women nowhere and it takes black people nowhere.
Can I ask a question?
I just want to thank him for using the word egoism, because I've heard careerism, but the career is just like the means to an end, and for most of these women, it ain't really even solving their issues.
It's status.
They go into these, get these degrees that ain't really doing much for them. We know what kind of degrees most of these black women get. They're not doing really much for them because they're still looking to be rescued, right, by the same men that they're handicapping. So it's really an ego thing. It's bragging rights. I got a degree. I got this. I'm better than you. Blase, blase, blah. That's what it is. And then when that doesn't, fulfill whatever dream you've been sold, now it's, oh, if you're a man, you got to do this, da 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 da. Be a man, come save me, come provide and protect me, yada yada. Oh, but you can't because you're weak and you're this and you're that and all these other things, right?
Yeah,
They,
step daddy cleanup man. Yeah.
They I mean, whether it's that or even if they don't have kids, what this is, they've been sold a dream and they have no problem selling out you, the community, the whole thing, right? And when they find out that it's bullshit, then they come back to the cookout.
So what's the solution? So what's the solution? Okay, so that seems like that's a overly. So I'll acknowledge that I don't think there is a solution.
Well, let me just say
I'll
this.
acknowledge that I agree with you.
Hey, look, let me say this, man. The solution to me is,
and Dr. Thunder wants to get in right after you, Gigi.
okay. So let me let him get through. But the only thing, we need some Gnosticism again, and what I mean by that is, we have to understand who we really are as we traverse this lifetime, and we don't know that because, as Dr. Neal said, man, we're chasing like careerism and what Western notions of success are. That's not success. It might seem like it, but you could be the wealthiest person, you could be the most advanced career person, and be ready to blow your brains out when you come home. Because you're not centered as a whole. You don't have any spiritual development. And I'm not talking about spiritual in terms of I'm trying to find a way to bargain my way into heaven. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about being able to live with others, understanding that it's not all about you all the time, understanding how to resolve conflicts, understanding how to calm yourself down when you're troubled, just being actually the type of creatures we were intended to be from our earliest development, evolutionarily. We are social animals living in a socially fabricated world that doesn't even remotely resemble the world that we lived in for the first 11 hours on the clock. So we're bargaining, trying to figure out how to make it all stick together, and we don't have a clue. There's a malaise, a deep malaise, even in the average Westerner, their person. And we're chasing after what they have in order to make ourselves complete and to feel like we've arrived and we've done something significant. Following these people, man, is not the way. Now, you might think it is because we're in the bowels and the entrails of the system. But trying to do what they're doing and trying to say, okay, I'm going to pat myself on the back because I got a degree or elsewhere or, in some other area or arena, that ain't the move.
Yeah.
It's not the move. So it's education, but it's an education of a spiritual and a moral kind that we don't have access to at this point.
Yeah,
Dr. Thunder. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean,
Dr. Thunder.
I hear what you're saying. It seems to me, and I read Dennis Sperling's comment about solution, and I happen to agree that part of the issue is we don't see ourselves in a certain kind of positive light. And one of the things that I'm trying to do is what little power I have, what little visibility I have, bring attention to Black men that have done, excellent things. And I'm a musician, and so I'm focusing on Black men in music. Something I'm doing. So Ohio State has an annual Ohio State Jazz Festival, and I'm the person that puts that festival on. I book all the artists, and I had a piece commissioned on our headliner concert called the Black Male Excellence Suite, and it's there are three movements. Slide Hampton is one of the focuses. Also, John Clayton and Dennis McCrell, great arranger composers. And, I see it actually as sort of an addition to these acronyms that Dr. Ronald Neal speaks on frequently. I'm it can be quite disheartening seeing seeing the way that the numbers are in the academy and understanding what's going on in our communities. And it can be disheartening also because it can seem as though nobody is listening. Nobody hears, what's going on. It seems to me that more attempts at making this information cross over in some sort of way, by tying it together with things in the arts. I'll tell you one thing that the sort of the liberal propagandists have figured out is you can use Hollywood. Hollywood can be very powerful ally, and so they tend to sort of corner the market in a lot of the or a lot of the artistic stuff.
I think the black female image has been seduced by that very entity. But go ahead.
Yeah. So anyhow, I'm just trying to think out loud about what are some other things that we can do to help to sort of push the needle, to help press it forward.
Well, I think one of the things is, and BGS has always been an avid, supporter of the notion of changing the environment, as the environment seems to be, the main framework that seems to influence people across ideology, occupation, class. But I think one of the things we have to keep in mind is that Black men have an impact, whether we acknowledge it or not. Even now, if you look at like the manosphere, for example, see all these brothers talking about SYSBM, see all these brothers pulling back from marriage, which has really been happening since 1965. There has been a reverberation going out into the environment from Black men's actions or lack of action, right? There's a reverberation. It has impact. So I think what needs to take place is that Black men have to become conscious of what that impact is and strategize our behavior. I think what was said earlier in the chat, though, and Dennis brought up, conditioning our boys with confidence, actually being able to take stock in our value, making decisions differently as it pertains to who we couple with, and taking that more seriously. Strategizing politically. And this is one of the reasons I advocate for the Black male political agenda we've created here on the show. The idea that there needs to be a specific agenda, not just for Black folk, but Black men, right? By taking those kinds of steps, you actually do change the environment, and other people have to respond and adapt to what you're doing. If a mass of Black men move in the same direction, or at least in a similar direction, you're going to have an impact. And so that's one of the reasons that I'm on YouTube. That's why I'm using social media. There has to be a way where we first get a sense of where we are and the level of vulnerability that our position is framed in. I think when we start talking fantastically about where Black men are, sometimes we get a little out. No, what does the data show us about where we actually are? Not where we'd like to be, not where we imagine we are. Where are we actually across a variety of different issues? And once we have an understanding of where we actually are, and we can begin to strategize, I think that's when you begin to shift the environment from your vantage point. But it has to start with that discussion. That has to be first. Go ahead.
Yeah, and what I want to add, and thank you, Dr. Thunder, for invoking the acronyms. You're not talking about BMA, Black Male Agency, man.
Yes, sir.
And and Black Male Agency is about what we have always done, really, as Black men. Black men have never been like completely passive in this country. We've never just folded our arms and just surrendered to the forces all around us. You know what I'm saying? We have acted. A lot of times it's if it's not verbalized, it's through our own actions, what we do. We vote with our feet and everything. And I think the beauty of this moment, man, is that we live in a a globalized world, man. We live in a, you know, a technologically dominated world, man. I mean, again, we've talked about this in this space. You know, no one could have imagined, you know, what we're doing now 20 years ago or 25 years ago, having these kind of conversations, talking to the people that we talk to and what have you. And we have no clue as to what the future impact of what we're doing right now is. And, you know, I've said this on my page, and I will continue to say this. It doesn't take all 20 million of us.
No.
You know, I use a very modest number. I'm like, if you just take 1 million of us who are vocal and who are active and who are public, that impacts
Yes.
that impact goes a
Yes.
very long way. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? And here's the other thing. Here's the other, and this might sound kind of strange and weird. Uh, I think it's a good thing that black men are not colonized in the way that black women are. I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing that we have the kind of clarity, we have the kind of insight, we can see things as they are in a way in which this colonized elite does not. You know what I'm saying? In that I don't really, I mean, I don't envy black women. I don't have any resentment towards them, anything like that. I don't think they're winning. I don't see them in a winning position
Nope.
in terms of how they operate. You know what I'm saying? There's nothing to envy about being an imperial subject in the way in which at least I see them as imperial subjects. You know what I'm saying? And that we have perspectives that confound the perspectives that we have confound feminism. The perspectives that we have confound, you know, liberalism. It confounds, you know, different sorts of left wing perspectives and what have you. It confounds political conservatism. The black male has always had a perspective that is unique and different and distinct because of our positionality.
Right.
And I think that that's something that we need to that's something that we need to affirm.
Mhm.
That's something that we need to accept, you know, accent. That's something that we need to amplify.
Mhm.
So I don't see us as like complete losers. Yes, sometimes it's easy. I get despondent. I get, you know, I despair sometimes with this situation because, you know, the thing that gets me the most is that black men have been programmed so much. You know what I mean? That black men, have internalized gynocentrism to such an extent that sometimes it's like, oh my God, can we get out of this? But the reality is that you have new generations coming along. The environment changes things, and you know that disrupts the stuff that we're dealing with right now. You know what I mean? And I think that we are, you know, we are not in the best position, but I'm not going to say that we're in the worst position. You know what I'm saying? I think that with globalization the way it is right now and technology, and as long as we take advantage of these technologies and as long as we continue to craft an ideology and push an ideology, because that's what's at stake, right? The women have an ideology that been weaponized against us. What we have to have is an ideology that counters that ideology. And it's not just the women's ideology, it's the ideology of liberals and leftists, white supremacists. You understand what I'm saying? And this is something that black men have always had to do, man. So, um,
But also one that emphasizes humanizing ourselves because we've been made caricatures
absolutely.
to ourselves. There has to be a point where we humanize ourselves. Hell, even in our own eyes. You know, that's so. I agree with you. I agree.
Check this out.
Hey,
I mean,
I just I don't mean to jump in. I've got a split. I just wanted to say, you know, I love, admire, respect you all. Please keep advocating for us. Please keep up the good work. Don't be discouraged. Um, you know, I'm not a pessimist. I asked the question because I want us to be doing things that are positive, and I want other folks that are listening to, you know, get some ideas of just some positive things that we can be doing. to further the cause. So anyhow, God bless you all, and I'll be ninja watching. Seeing you later.
Appreciate that, Dr. Thunder, and likewise to you. At this point, I'd like for people to give their final thoughts as we begin to close out. And I think Marcus was about to say something. Go ahead, man.
So I'm going to say this. I mean, we're talking about, what we're going through with our women, right? Understand, like, because, I'm seeing things said like, what we need to do is teach our boys that they're valuable and blah, blah, blah. Understand, a lot of us don't even have that opportunity because we don't even have access to our own children. And that has more to do with the power structure in this country than anything else, right? So we can talk about women, black women, but at the end of the day, we live in America, all right, where the state gives black women the power to do all of the things that we're talking about tonight, right? So, when he asks, well, what's the solution? I think what a lot of us are afraid to say, all right, is the obvious. Now, I heard somebody mention, I think it might have been you, Doc, SYSBM, and I push that all the way. Understand this, right? If it's not working, leave it alone. If these women aren't with your program, find you another woman. I tell men on my channel, you got options.
Mm-hmm.
Even when you check all the boxes, you still don't get what they telling you you're gonna get. If you check the boxes. Even the high value men go through these issues. So it's all BS. I want to keep it clean on the Doc's channel as best I can, right? What I'm saying is, at the end of the day, and I don't care if the woman is from Mars, find you a female that'll serve your plate and go sit on the couch and read a book.
And be happy, huh?
And be happy. You understand what I'm saying? If it gotta go that extreme for it to work, so that you can have access to your children, so you ain't got to fight for years in court to get access to your children. So then by the time they're teenagers, all the training and the coaching and all of this, those years are gone.
Mm-hmm.
Those years are gone, man. I had a guy on my stream say, yo, he moved out the country to get married to a black woman, right? Or I don't know, I don't remember. But he went out the country to understand. It's not just the women; it's the environment.
It's the environment. Yep.
It's the environment, right?
That's true.
So it's bigger than that. It's bigger than, we can talk about everything that they're doing and what they understand. Look, they want power. It ain't just about careers. They get careers in psychology and make no money. They get careers as social workers and make no money. They still need to, come to you and talk about, I ain't going 50-50, you a roommate. So do you. They're not race loyal. Why are we playing good cop? If there's no race loyalty, why are we trying to bring it back? The cat's out the bag. It ain't going back in. Period. SYSBM. And Doc, thank you for having me on. As usual, I could ramble, but I'm gonna stop right here and let the other brothers.
Yeah, don't want to go too far now.
Yeah.
Don't want to get started.
Yeah, man.
Hey, don't start. There won't be none, Marcus.
Nah. I want no smoke.
I'll make sure. Look, as each of the brothers get a closing thoughts, make sure, if you haven't already become members of the channel or subscribe to their channels, do so. That's why the labels are up, so you can get there. Watch the spelling on Keep It 100, but go over to his channel, subscribe to the channel, and check out his material over there. Appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, especially his community tab, which for that,
All right, y'all.
Tired with that. All right, man.
No doubt. Love. Peace.
Dr. Neal, holla at us, man.
I just want to say, man, to everybody who is watching this stream right now, to support Dr. J, support BGS IBMOR, support Green Gorilla, support Keep It 100, support all the brothers who are out here, support me, man. Yeah, all of us who are putting this content out here because we care about black men and we care about the future of black men. and these conversations are a part of it. I said this before, we didn't have this 20 years ago. We didn't have it. We needed something like this in some kind of
Mhm.
form decades ago, but we didn't have it. But
Right.
we have it now. This is invaluable. This is invaluable. These conversations on what we're doing and what have you. And I agree. I mean, I'm with Keep It 100, man. Y'all know I'm SYSBM, man. You know what I'm saying? And my thing is, your happiness. I talk about, BMH, Black men's happiness. That's
Mm.
that's paramount. It is paramount. I want you all, do not get caught up in the trap of pessimism. Don't get caught up in the traps of despair or what have you. I got some videos coming out real soon, man. I was in Raleigh, North Carolina over the past weekend. This is spring break for me right now, man. I had the time of my life, man. I had the time of my life. All right.
Mm.
I'm
Mm.
gonna upload some of that stuff. But what what I want to get at is that, although, these, what we talk about often seems very dark and grim and what have you, there was also an other side, man. And we have to keep that other side, in perspective, that we can make, as Keeper 100 said, we can make our own decisions within this environment. We can say
Mhm.
no. We can say no. You know what? I don't want this. This is a bad deal. This arrangement does not work for me. It works against me and what have you. And you keep it moving. Okay. Well, Keeper 100, when he talked about this guy, listen, a man who moves to a different country to start a family, all right, is doing that because he wants something deep in his life. It's bigger. It's not about sex. It's not about exoticizing a foreign woman. It's because we are freaking human beings.
Mm.
And we are meant to live as human beings in community and in relationship and in connection and all that kind of stuff. Those things are real, bro. I mean, those things are real. And I say this to you as a man who's lived as a bachelor all my doggone life.
Mm.
And that if the environment was different, if we lived under different arrangement, I would be married, I would have kids, I would be a father, I would have all those things. I'm keeping it real with you, 100.
Mm.
But because this North American environment is so toxic,
Mm.
I make choices that preserve my sanity and my life.
Yeah.
And I want you black men to do the same. Okay? You might not be able to change the government. You might not be able to change the way corporations work. You can't change this black female, but you can have control over your immediate circumstances. And that's what I want you black men to do.
I'm gonna tell you, Doc, I ain't gonna be mad if I find out there's some kids that speak Portuguese all of a sudden. Just saying, it ain't over. You don't have a clock like other groups do. So I'm just
They're
saying,
gonna
bro.
they're gonna start calling Doc Black Jesus out down there pretty
Hey,
soon.
man. Hey, I'm just saying, don't throw the idea out. You know, but I appreciate you coming on, man. Y'all support Dr. Ronald Neal's channel. Definitely, go back through his videos if you haven't already, and
Yeah, yeah.
definitely get familiar with the terminology. BMI for real. Come on, Gigi, hit us.
Oh, hold on, I turned the mic off. So, hold on. Let me turn. I had the TV on. I was listening. No, I'm listening through my television. You know what I'm saying? So,
Oh, okay.
But at any rate, I've tried my best, in this past few months, to resettle myself and to recenter myself and to do things that I love. Because if you talk about these issues, man, over and over again, and if you get obsessed with,
Yeah,
the negativity,
yeah.
it'll have a draining effect,
Yep.
to the point where you're not going to be productive yourself, and, you're not going to lively up your own spiritual condition. And so, I've been trying to, do things that I enjoy. So I started a music channel. I mean, there's not very many subscribers to it, but that's neither here nor there. I mean, I'm doing what I like to do.
What's the name of it?
Yeah.
It's called Afrobeat Live.
There it is.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So basically, I'm trying to do something I enjoy.
Right.
And this is a duty for me, though, because I'm compelled to work in behalf of justice for black men.
That's right. That's right.
I'm required. I'm obligated.
Yes, sir.
We shouldn't, be in a negative state though forever. Just consistently worried, and I think Dr. Neal is right about this. Being obsessed about what these women are doing, like they're going to do what they've been doing. Okay, it's up for us to carve out a lane for ourselves, free from, negative stereotypes and ideas. So I mean, if they say they want to divest, fine, go ahead and divest, okay? But here's the deal. You got to divest yourself from your own fruit that comes from your own womb. That's pathological psychologically. Do black men have some issues they need to deal with? Absolutely, But the way to work through this is to do something that you love to do, man, and be around people that you really love and enjoy to be around. Don't consume negativity 24/7, man. You know what I'm saying? Try to balance what it is that you're exposed to, because you do have a choice in that matter. You have a choice on what you choose to focus on and what you choose to have in your consistent sphere of awareness. You understand? And so as black men though, we also have to deal with reality though. So we can create diversions and distractions for ourselves, but we still have to deal with the reality. But like Marcus said, we do have choices. If you don't like the food at restaurant A, you don't like McDonald's, go to Burger King. You can have it your way there. You don't like Domino's, go to Pizza Hut. I mean, it's just obvious, I mean, if you get caught up into a cycle of doing the same thing incessantly, you're going to get the same results.
You got a billion women over 3 billion women on the planet.
And I love black women. To be perfectly honest, I love them. But sometimes you gotta you gotta distance yourself from what you love. Sometimes you do. I mean, it ain't. I want to try to communicate with these women on some degree, but I'm harsh, man. I'm heavy-handed. I'm a straight shooter. I tell it how it is. I don't believe in infantilizing women and observing, these, so-called, conventions where I'm supposed to defer to you because I feel like you're too frail to handle what is real. That's bullshit to me. I've never infantilized women. I mean, I was raised by a black woman, but my mother was similar to Kanye's mother. I mean, every time I walked in the door, she would say my name 3 or 4 times, like cheering for me. And trying to help me, cycle through my issues and my problems. And I wonder today, like with the mindset of these ladies out here, like, I mean, how are you treating your children? How are you treating your father, your brothers, your uncles, your nephews? How are you interacting with these guys? You understand what I mean? Because if you believe that we're the source and the repository of everything that's wrong in the world and what's wrong in the black community itself, then you're not taking an objective look at what's actually happening to black people. And I think that's important. We need to actually look into black folks and study what's actually happening to us if we want to overcome our issues and our problems. Politics is cool. Moral intuitionism is cool, which, and brother Ian Graves asked me, well, what's moral intuitionism? Well, it's basically like what we conventionally think about what's right or wrong. I mean, like the conventional story is, like when you think about a wife batterer or you think about intimate partner abuse, you think about a woman who just gets popped on the head arbitrarily for burning the toast, or making the hamburger too well done. He likes it a little rare, but he took a bite. The sandwich was all, well done, and he was like, okay, it's time for me to go damage a motherfucker now. That's not how this happens. I mean, our conception of reality about a whole bunch of issues is as far away from the truth as the man in the moon. And I don't see how we're going to actually rectify any issues or problems that we have in our community with moral intuitionism that has no basis in reality. So, like, forget the moral intuitionism. Forget the politics. Let's study black folks, man, and figure out what's going on with us so we can actually remedy what's going on with us. But other than that, no, I ain't going to try to save the world, all day, every day, though. I'm going to try to save the world a quarter of the day. But as the SYSBM says, at least I got to give 3/4 to myself. You understand?
Right.
Because if I ain't straight, what the baby's going to do? If I'm screwed up, many of y'all ain't got babies, but my babies is grown.
What is the rule on an airplane, man? When the mask comes down, right? Put the mask on yourself first.
Hey man, you've been taught not to look after yourself. You've been taught that you're a workhorse for everybody else, and that you need to do what's going to be to the benefit of everyone else. And women have made this argument themselves, like, well, we always feel like we have to serve X, Y, and Z. Well, I feel like, there's a correlate to that when it comes to black men. We're supposed to do a whole bunch of things that, we take for granted that we actually do and that nobody pats us on the back for. But,
right.
If you start to notice that, you're like Jeffrey from not the New Bel Air, but the Fresh Prince of Bel Air. Like, you get treated like Jeffrey or Mr. Belvedere. You find yourself going through, circles and cycles trying to make sure what's wrong with people and stuff like that. It's time for you to step off, bro. Know when to cut the cord.
So in other words, do the work and listen to Afrobeat live while you're doing it.
But that's key though, because
music
music calms the savage beast, man. Like if you consuming manosphere content 16 hours out of the day, and you don't do something that you enjoy that'll calm you down from this, boy, you'll be amped up. You understand what I mean? I'm just saying you'll be amped up to the point where you won't be able to think about anything differently. And so my goal is, like if you listen to the knowledge that I give, but at the same time listen to the music that I have too, so you can enjoy yourself, man. You gotta dance every now and then, man. Do a two-step or something, bruh. Do a two-step or something, bruh.
Balance. Yes.
It's a balance, man.
Yeah.
All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy.
Much appreciated, Gigi. Y'all make sure you check the Green Gorilla channel, support the brother, and support Afrobeat Live. You know what I'm saying? Because it's running 24 hours a day, right?
Yeah, it's running 24/7, man. My goal is to make 12 hours of music in 6 months. Now, that's ambitious.
Yeah,
but me and Marcus, we supposed to be doing a rap song about this manosphere thing. That track is smooth. That track smooth as grease.
Yeah, boy, and don't be afraid to use it as a backing track and giving Gigi credit for the channel.
Yeah, and so any of y'all if you're making a video, I haven't really actually done individual videos for all of the tracks, but I'm going to start doing that.
They know how to do it, man. They know how to do it.
And you can use the music, man. Use it, just attribute, use any of it. However you want to use it, but just give me attribution. That's all, man. You don't have to give me no money, no nothing. All you got to do is say, "Hey, yo, I got these beats from Gigi."
Yeah, we get the beats and link it back to the channel so we get the channel to grow.
Let me put a link to the channel if I can.
I think I have.
You gotta share that, Doc. I can't share it because
send it to me in the private chat.
Yeah, I think I have. I have.
Well, one of y'all send it in because I
got it. Yeah.
Thank you, man. I appreciate y'all, man. Y'all are some great dudes, man. I mean, like the camaraderie I've developed with you guys, man, over the course of of course I had a relationship with Dr. Johnson and Ronald Neal earlier, but the rapport that I've developed with you guys, man, is fantastic, man. I remember one time me and Marcus were arguing online on Facebook, man, and my first thing was, hold on, wait a minute, dog. Like, this is what a man will do. Let's communicate for real, dog. Let's have a real for real conversation and talk. And we become great. Like, I ain't gonna say we the best friends ever, like we BFFs and some,
but your boys,
women say. But we cool, man. Like, I mean, like we holler at each other now and check on each other from time to time and talk about what we ought to do and ought to not do in relation to content and a whole bunch of other issues. We talk about things. So it's we need this, man. This is like
Marcus, Marcus is an acquired taste. Okay.
hey man, it's like beer when you first start to drink it. But I rock with Mark. He and I rock with BGS, man. I rock with a lot of you guys, Dennis and a whole bunch of other guys out there, man. And
swallow in your mouth.
sometimes I don't agree with what all y'all say, but I mean, hey man, like I don't agree with myself from 2 months ago.
I've seen that.
I'll disagree with myself. You know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, we're not a monolith. What we call the black manosphere is diverse. And so, it's men coming together to talk about issues that we have. And it's a beautiful thing, man.
BGS, I think the channel link you put up is for Green Gorilla's channel, but not Afrobeats.
Okay, Afrobeats. Okay.
You can find Afrobeats Live. I think it's Afrobeats Live, right?
It's just Afrobeat Live.
Okay,
Afrobeat Live. Okay.
Yeah, that's it, man. And if the, channel names change all the time. Some people change their channel names, like Officer Faulkner changes his name. He one minute he this Negro, and the next minute he that Negro or whatever. So, people change their channel names like people change clothes. But all I'm trying to do is, and the channel was supposed to be highlighting the contribution of black men to music throughout the world. So wherever black men make music,
right,
and they have African ancestry, whether it be Afro-Latino ancestry, whether it be American ancestry, British ancestry, African ancestry, Caribbean ancestry, we all have that musical vibe, bro. And it runs like a thread throughout all of our cultures, man, when it comes to music, man. We the heartbeat of all musics, forms of music, man, from rock and roll to country, man. Whatever it is, man, we've had a hand in it and influencing it and shaping it. So it's, I got little history blurbs and stuff like that, what the contributions are. So check that out, man. Black brothers, man. You think the entertainment industry is superficial, and it is to some degree, but without being able to turn on some tunes at times, man, and to relax, man, and to chill out, bro, you'll go mad.
Yeah, everybody listening, head on over there and then go ahead and give them a sub.
Please do that, man. I want to monetize that channel, man. Go ahead and do that, man.
You already know I already got you.
Right.
I look.
Right.
Music solves. It can soothe the savage beast, man.
Well, that's what's up. So let's make sure we support both the Green Gorilla channel and Afrobeat Live, and let's get BGS in here, man. Give us some thoughts, man.
Oh man, basically ain't no meat on the bones anymore, man. I'm just sitting back, enjoying the all-star cast. But you know what? I've been noticing, that this is a big. You guys have become a big rock in the pond, man. And the ripples are actually shooting out all over the place because even the feminists are actually fighting, and the women are actually listening and coming to the table. So, I always said, when Doc came, and I always told Doc from the very beginning, I said, he said, what's going to be like? I said, man, you're just the first. The thing is, if we don't do it right, you'll be the last. So the thing is, you guys coming in are an example of Doc doing it right. Because Dr. Green Gorilla, Dr. Neal, Dr. Thunder, Dr. Doug and others coming in means that Doc did it right. And basically, he's Captain America with this shield, man, and everybody's saying on your left. Them portals are opening up because Doc was out there, man, with that broken shield, man, out there fighting Thanos by himself. He said, "Well, if I got to do it, I got to do it, man." But you guys open up them portals, and he said, "Assemble."
You can call me Dr. Strange, man. Doctor Strange.
Don't even get that started, PG. You the Hulk, straight up.
Yeah, I am a little bit like Smash.
You Hulk Smash for real. Man.
Yeah.
But
Call
the
me
reason
Magneto. I'm Magneto.
You Magneto.
But I gotta be me, man. I can't I'm from humble beginnings, and so the way I speak, man, I try to make it to where anybody can understand it, man. I'm your decipherer. I'm your Hermes, man. If to use a Greek mythological allusion, man, I'm like trying to make it to where everybody can get it and understand it. That's my job, bro.
That's what's up. I'm gonna take y'all down, but I appreciate y'all each coming through. Thanks a lot, man.
Hey,
peace out, bros.
Doc, it's BGS on your left.
Hey man, tell them the channels before you go, BGS. Tell them the channels, the support.
Okay, everybody probably knows me pretty much well. BGS IBMOR, Black Pill Gnostic, where I talk about women. If you want to hear me bash women, that's where it's going to be at. Um, the women's channel, I probably will start putting stuff on there again, and then for the deep stuff like reading and going through the book stuff like that, I try to put that on BGS for books. Like the last one I did was a combination of Dr. Neal and Dr. Curry. Man, basically classic stuff, man. About black women being socialized from from slavery, not to think of black men as mates. In fact, I think there's a classic line where they said it's better to be a slave or better to be a slave of a white man than be a husband of a black man.
Wow.
And they pointed that out. It's good that the scholars are actually bringing that out, and for black men to see how this didn't just start yesterday. It didn't just start in the '60s. This is an old pattern that's been fed over a long period of time, and it takes scholars like that to bring that kind of stuff out.
Okay. Much appreciated. And I appreciate each of you fellas. Let me close y'all out. So thanks a lot.
Peace out, bros.
Peace.
Peace.
You guys can take
Peace.
yourselves down too. So, before we do this. All right. So much appreciation to the brothers for coming through. It was a fairly last minute request to all of them, and they each came through. So again, I appreciate it. I appreciate those of you in the comment section, most particularly my assassins that are taking out whatever ridiculousness tries to pop up. They're taking troll heads. So shout out to y'all, man. Much appreciated. But look, man, all I was really trying to say tonight is that what we're really seeing is a seductive tactic that's being used. It is a carrot and stick dynamic. Black men have gotten the stick. Black women are being offered the carrot, and the long-term impact of this is a disassociated, broken community that cannot communicate with itself. And we already see the evidence of that now, if you're paying attention. So the frustration that some of us feel about, the degree to which this is happening with very little pushback is real. And I want to really bring this to your attention because it's so blatant in some respects and yet so subtle in others that we don't think anything about it. So a few years ago, when My Brother's Keeper was the big point of discussion, I saw so much negativity and frustration at the very thought that black men can get some attention. And when I saw the Tina Knowles pushback against her documentary, it's still alive and well. And yet I've seen nobody push back whatsoever on the programs that are being offered to black girls and women. And nobody's asking the question, what about the boys? What about the men? Now, I'm not asking that black men wait around for somebody to figure that out. I'm just pointing to the hypocrisy of that and the impact of generations of socialization to suggest that black men are not worthy of being considered of in such fashion by the very women that we've grown up with and live with and share families with. This is ridiculous. So at the end of the day, do what you need to do to keep your sanity, support your brothers, support the work they do. And at the end of the day, push to make sure that boys and men, black boys and men, have a means of not only survival, but a way to thrive, hopefully with each other as a resource. All right. So y'all have a good night. Peace. I am here to tell you, brothers, we are not criminals by birth, perennial rapists, incapable intellects, man-children, sperm donors, child support wellsprings, success objects, walking phalluses, ATM machines, lottery tickets, unintelligent henchmen, valueless assassins, pro bono mercenaries, unpaid bodyguards, interchangeable stepfathers, child discipline proxies, unpaid repairmen, workhorses, emotional tampons, or any other socially accepted dehumanizing stereotype. We are thinkers, inventors, innovators, leaders, fathers, and men. Embrace your humanity, know your worth, and extend your time, attention, and resources only to those who genuinely respect you. And remember, your worth is not defined by meeting other people's narcissistic and selfish and unrealistic needs. You define your worth. Peace.